In November 1284, you were the Lord of Thornwald Keep in Northumberland, with exactly 72 hours before a Crown auditor arrived to inspect an estate you had just placed under starvation rationing. Not because the harvest failed, because the Crown still required full tax payment from reserves you had already calculated did not exist. Here's what 3 days of making crisis look like competent management actually cost, when the auditor could strip your lands with a single report. The 200 souls sleeping in Thornwald Keep, who trusted that winter rationing was traditional stewardship, rather than calculated starvation, and whose survival depended on an audit report they would never see, determining whether their lord had managed scarcity or merely hidden crisis long enough to survive inspection. And hey, if stories like this help you drift off, take a second to subscribe, it means everything. You lift the lamp from its iron hook beside your chamber door, and step into the corridor at 3 hours past midnight. The cold arrives first. Not the temperature, you dressed for that, but the particular cold of stone that has spent 8 hours without a fire nearby, pulling heat from anything living that touches it. The lamp flame stretches tall, then bends as you move. The air smells of wood smoke from the kitchen vaults below, and something sharper underneath. The north wind coming through the arrow slits, carrying the smell of snow that has not fallen yet but will. Your keys hang from your belt, 7 iron pieces, each one specific. The storehouse, the grain vault, the wine cellar, the armory, the gate tower, the chapel. The strong box in your solo where the ledger lives. You have carried them for 11 years. Tonight they feel heavier, though their weight has not changed. The corridor runs 40 paces to the main stair. Your boots make no sound on the stone. This is deliberate. You walk the midnight inspection without announcement, because what you are looking for cannot be seen when people know you are coming. The lamp throws your shadow long against the wall. It reaches ahead of you, a darker shape moving through the darkness. You pass the first door. The steward's chamber, empty now. You dismissed him 6 days ago with a month's wages and a letter of reference. He was competent. That was the problem. Competent men ask questions about discrepancies in the accounts, and you cannot afford questions until after Sir Edmund of York has written his report and returned to London. Sir Edmund, 43 years old, 11 years in royal service. He closed 6 estates this season. His reputation is built on finding what other auditors miss. The second door belongs to Thomas the Old Bailiff. You stop, listen. His snoring comes through the oak in steady rhythm, the sound of a man who has served 3 lords and learned to sleep without worry, because worry is the Lord's burden, not his. Thomas has been bailiff for 26 years. He knows the estate, he knows the households, he knows which tenants will make their rents, and which will beg extension. What Thomas does not know, what you have not yet told him, is that the grain count you recorded in the ledger 9 days ago showed a shortfall of 43 bushels against what the winter requires, and that the ration system you implemented yesterday cuts every household allocation by margins calculated to keep 200 people alive until March, without appearing desperate to an auditor trained to spot desperation. Thomas will need to know, not tonight. Tomorrow, when you can walk him through the numbers in daylight and watch his face to ensure he understands what must be said to Sir Edmund and what must not. You continue to the stair. The main hall opens below. No fire in the central half at this hour. That is part of the rationing, though you announced it as tradition. Winter discipline. You called it in the household assembly yesterday morning. Our fathers banked coals at night to preserve fuel. We honor their practice. 17 people nodded. None of them remembered their fathers doing any such thing, but none of them challenged you either, because challenging the Lord's memory of tradition is not something tenants do when they depend on that Lord for spring seed and summer wages. The hall is empty, long tables, benches pushed beneath them, rushes on the floor, replaced 3 days ago so they would look fresh when Sir Edmund arrives. The smell is clean, lavender and thyme mixed into the straw. You insisted on that. Details matter during audit. A hall that smells of rot suggests a household that has let standards slip. A hall that smells of herbs suggests a household that maintains discipline even under hardship. You cross to the kitchen stair, descend. The lamplight reaches ahead into the vaulted space below. The kitchen is not empty. Marjorie the cook stands beside the central table, a tallow candle in her hand, its flame smaller than your lamp's but steadier. She is checking the bread dough set to rise overnight. She does this every night. You have known this for 11 years. What you did not expect was for her to turn when you reached the bottom step and say, without surprise, "The third barrel, my lord. The one closest to the stair. The lid does not sit flush. Saw it myself this afternoon. Thought you should know before morning." You set the lamp on the table. Walk to the barrel, she means. Press the lid. It rocks. Not much. Enough. Flour? You ask. Barley, she says. From the October delivery. Sat in the cart too long before we moved it inside. Bottom layer took damp. I had Peter scrape it out and burn it this morning. The rest is sound, but the barrel's short now, maybe 2 inches. 2 inches of barley is roughly a quarter bushel. A quarter bushel is 7 days of kitchen allocation under the ration schedule. You do not say this aloud. Can you fill the gap? You ask. Oats, she says. No one measures barrels by looking inside them. They measure by weight and by count. I put oats on top. Lighter, but it fills the space. Looks full. You study her face. She is 51 years old. She has cooked in this kitchen for 23 years. She has fed lords, tenants, soldiers, and guests. She has stretched provisions through bad harvests before. She knows what you are doing, even if you have not said it directly. Sir Edmund will inspect the storehouses, you say. I know, she says. He will look at the barrels. He will see full barrels, Marjorie says. He will not open them. That is not what auditors do. They count containers. They check seals. They verify that what the ledger says exists is present and accounted for. They do not empty barrels to check for damp at the bottom, unless they already suspect fraud. You meet her eyes. She does not look away. Thank you, you say. She nods once, returns to the dough. You take the lamp and climb back to the hall. The wind has picked up. You hear it now, a low whistle through the slits in the eastern wall. The snow is coming. Not tonight, tomorrow perhaps. Certainly before Sir Edmund arrives. That will complicate his journey. It will not stop him. Royal auditors do not delay circuit for weather. They delay circuit for nothing. The Exchequer mandates the schedule. Sir Edmund follows it. You cross the hall to the outer door, lift the bar, step into the courtyard. The cold is immediate and absolute. No wood smoke here, no residual warmth from hearthstones, just the November wind, and the stone underfoot, and the stars overhead, visible between the breaks in the cloud cover moving south. The first storehouse stands 30 paces across the courtyard. You walk toward it, lamp raised. The keys rattle against your belt. You find the correct one by touch. Fit it into the lock. Turn. The door opens. Inside, the air is colder than outside. This is intentional. Cold preserves. The smell is grain and wood, and the particular dryness of a space that holds no moisture, because moisture spoils what is stored. You step inside. Raise the lamp. 41 barrels, stacked 3 high along the western wall, each one sealed, each one marked with the month and contents. You have already counted them. You have already recorded the count in the ledger. You have already calculated what they contain against what the winter will require. The shortfall is real. It is not a clerical error. It is not a miscalculation. The harvest failed, and the reserves are insufficient, and the ration system you announced yesterday is the only variable you can control. What Sir Edmund will see in 72 hours is a storehouse that contains exactly what the ledger claims. What he will not see is that the rations you have allocated depend on every barrel being full to the brim, and that 3 of them are not, and that the households eating reduced portions believe the reduction is traditional winter discipline, rather than the mathematical minimum required to reach March without starvation. You close the door, lock it, test the lock twice. The wind gusts across the courtyard. You turn your back to it, and walk toward the gate tower, where the guard should be awake, and where the watch log should show regular entries confirming that the perimeter has been walked, and that nothing has entered or left since sunset. The lamp flame bends. Your shadow stretches behind you now. Somewhere in the keep, 200 people sleep. They do not know that their survival depends on a single conversation 3 days from now, between you and a man who has closed 6 estates this season, for failures smaller than the one you are currently concealing. They do not need to know. That is not their burden. You reach the gate tower, climb the stair. The guard hears you coming and straightens. His name is Osric. He has held this post for 9 years. "All quiet, my lord," he says. "The log," you say. He hands it over. You read the entries by lamplight. Perimeter walked at sunset. Again at first watch. Again at second watch. No arrivals. No departures. The gate has been barred since dusk. This is correct. You return the log. 3 days, you say. Sir Edmund of York arrives at midday on the 3rd day. He will expect entry immediately. The gate is to be opened without delay. The hall is to be prepared. Marjorie knows. Thomas will know by morning. Osric nods. "Yes, my lord." You descend the stair, cross the courtyard again. The wind follows you. The lamp flame holds. Inside the hall, you bar the door behind you. Climb the main stair. Return to the corridor. Past Thomas's door, still snoring. Past the steward's empty chamber. Reach your own door. You hang the lamp back on its hook. The keys return to their place on the table beside your bed. You do not remove your boots. You do not undress. You sit on the edge of the bed and look at the ledger on the table. It is closed. The numbers inside it are accurate. Sir Edmund will verify them. He will find no fraud. He will find perfect alignment between what you have recorded and what physically exists in the storehouses. What he will not find is the margin of safety that should exist between recorded reserves and actual need. That margin has been eliminated. You eliminated it 9 days ago when you wrote the final count and realized the harvest had failed, and decided that rationing was preferable to requesting Crown relief, because Crown relief comes with Crown oversight, and Crown oversight means Sir Edmund or someone like him taking permanent residence in Thornwold Keep, and making every decision you currently make alone. You close your eyes, open them. The lamp flame outside your door flickers in a draft you cannot feel from here. 72 hours. You will spend them preparing the estate for inspection. You will spend them briefing Thomas on what to say. You will spend them ensuring that every visible surface reflects competence, rather than crisis. And when Sir Edmund arrives, you will show him a household that appears to function exactly as the ledger claims it does, because the difference between a functioning estate and a failed one is not always the reality of the situation. It is what can be proven. You lie back. The ceiling beams are dark above you. Somewhere in the kitchen vaults, Marjorie checks the bread dough one more time before she sleeps. Somewhere in the gatehouse, Osric walks his perimeter. Somewhere on the road from London, Sir Edmund of York continues north. The wind howls through the arrow slits. You close your eyes. The inspection has begun. You wake at first light. Not because you slept well. Because the cold woke you, the particular cold that comes just before dawn, when the hearthstones have spent the entire night radiating away their stored warmth and have nothing left to give. You rise. Your breath fogs. The chamber window shows grey sky, clouds moving fast from the north. The snow is closer now. You can feel it in the air pressure, a heaviness that settles on the skin before the first flakes fall. You dress. The keys go back on your belt. The ledger stays on the table. You will need it later, but not for this. The corridor is empty. You descend the main stair without the lamp. Dawn provides enough light now, grey and thin, but sufficient. The hall is still cold. No fire yet. Marjorie will light the kitchen hearth soon, but the central hearth remains dark. Winter discipline. You announced it, now you live with it. You cross to the kitchen stair. Descend into warmth. Marjorie has already started the fire. The central hearth glows with coals brought up from the banked embers, and the smell of burning oak fills the vaulted space. She stands at the main table, kneading dough. Peter the scullery boy crouches beside the hearth, feeding split wood into the flames. He is 14 years old. He has worked in this kitchen for 2 years. He sleeps on a pallet beside the furnace because the furnace room is the warmest place in the keep and because scullery boys do not rate private chambers. "My lord," Marjorie says without looking up from the dough. You cross to the table. The bread dough has risen overnight. Marjorie shapes it into loaves with practiced efficiency. Press, fold, turn, press again. Each loaf identical. Each one calculated to feed a specific number of people at a specific allocation. "Thomas," you say, "I need him here within the hour." "Already sent Peter to wake him," Marjorie says. "He'll be down soon as he's dressed." You study the loaves. 12 of them, lined up on the floured board. "How many days?" you ask. "These 12? 3 days if we hold portions to ration schedule." She does not look up. Her hands continue the rhythm. "I can stretch it to 4 if I cut thinner, but thin enough, and people notice they're still hungry after eating." 3 days is correct, you say. She nods. Shapes the next loaf. You walk to the storage alcove at the far end of the kitchen. The barrels are here, the ones Marjorie mentioned last night. Flour, barley, oats, salt, dried peas. Each one marked. Each one accounted for in the ledger. You check the third barrel, the one with the loose lid. Press down. It sits flush now. You lift the edge, look inside. Oats on top, just as she said. Pale grain, dry, filling the visible space. Below that, barley. You cannot see how far down the barley goes without emptying the barrel. And you are not going to empty the barrel. Sir Edmund will not empty the barrel either. He will see what Marjorie intended him to see. A full container, properly sealed, contents matching the ledger entry. The medieval grain management system is the 1284 equivalent of a magic trick, where the audience knows they're being deceived but cannot prove it, because the only way to verify the deception requires destroying the evidence. You stack barrels to look full. You rotate stock to hide shrinkage. You mix heavy grain with light grain so the weight feels right when lifted. The system works because auditors do not have time to empty every container in every estate they inspect. They have a circuit to complete, and the circuit has a deadline, and the deadline matters more to the exchequer than absolute certainty about the contents of barrel 17 in a Northumberland kitchen. You lower the lid. Press until it sits flush. The seal holds. Behind you, footsteps on the stair. You turn. Thomas the old bailiff descends into the kitchen, moving carefully on the worn stone steps. He is 67 years old. He has been bailiff of Thornwold Keep since before you inherited it. He knows the estate better than you do in some ways. Which tenants pay early, which pay late, which require pressure, which require patience. What Thomas does not know yet is what you are about to tell him. "My lord," Thomas says. He looks at Marjorie, at Peter, then back to you. "You wanted to see me." "I did," you say. "Walk with me." You climb back to the hall. Thomas follows. The morning light is stronger now, grey but clear. You cross to the western window and stop. Sir Edmund of York, you say, Crown Revenue Auditor. He arrives in 69 hours to inspect our grain reserves and submit a report to the Exchequer. Thomas nods. The messenger brought word 2 days ago. I have been preparing the harvest failed, you say. You know this, everyone knows this. What they do not know is how badly it failed. The final count shows a shortfall of 43 bushels against winter requirement. I have implemented rationing to compensate. The household believes this is traditional winter discipline. It is not. It is a calculated minimum designed to keep 200 people alive until March, without depleting reserves below the level required for Crown tax payment. Thomas is silent for a moment. Then, 43 bushels, my lord, that is significant. It is survivable, you say, if the rationing holds. If no additional losses occur. If Sir Edmund's inspection concludes that our reserves are adequate and our management is competent. And if he concludes otherwise, then he reports to the Exchequer that Thornwald Keep is mismanaged, and the Crown places the estate under receivership, and someone else makes the decisions that keep 200 people alive through winter. You turn to face him. I need you to understand what Sir Edmund will ask and what you will answer. Thomas straightens. I am loyal to Thornwald Keep, my lord. I have served. I know your loyalty, you say. I am not questioning your loyalty. I am telling you that loyalty is not enough. Sir Edmund does not care about loyalty. He cares about numbers. He will ask you how many bushels are in the storehouse. You will tell him the number in the ledger. He will ask you whether the ration schedule is normal for winter. You will tell him it is traditional practice, honored by lords before me, continued now because it preserves grain and maintains household discipline. Is it traditional practice, my lord? It is now, you say. As of yesterday, tradition is what we say it is, Thomas. Sir Edmund was not here last winter. He was not here the winter before that. He cannot verify what we practiced in previous years unless someone in this household tells him otherwise. Thomas looks at you for a long moment, then he nods slowly. I understand, my lord. Do you? You step closer. Because if you hesitate when he asks, if you look uncertain or defer to me for confirmation, he will know something is wrong. He is trained to detect uncertainty. That is his function. He closes estates by finding the moment when the bailiff glances at the lord before answering, because that glance means the bailiff is not certain of the truth. Then I will not glance at you, Thomas says quietly. I will tell him the rations are traditional. I will tell him the reserves are adequate. I will tell him Thornwald Keep is managed according to practices established over generations. You hold his gaze. Good. My lord, Thomas says. If I may ask, why rationing instead of requesting Crown relief? Because Crown relief comes with permanent Crown oversight, you say. And permanent Crown oversight means we lose the ability to make decisions like the one I made 9 days ago, when I chose rationing over transparency. The Crown does not trust lords who admit failure. The Crown removes lords who admit failure. I am not admitting failure. I am managing scarcity. Sir Edmund will verify this when he inspects the storehouses, and finds that every number in the ledger matches physical reality. Thomas nods. Then we will show him a well-managed estate, my lord. We will, you say. Starting now, I want you to walk the storehouses with me this morning. I want you to see what Sir Edmund will see. I want you to know which barrels are full, which are sealed and which must not be opened under any circumstance. The third barrel in the kitchen vault, Thomas says. You stop. You know about that? Marjorie told me this morning when Peter woke me. Thomas says. She said you inspected it last night. She said, it looks full. She said it is not quite full, but that the gap is concealed, and that Sir Edmund will not detect the concealment unless he empties the barrel, which auditors do not do. She told you this? She did, my lord. She also said you would need me to confirm the household rationing as traditional practice when Sir Edmund questions me. She was correct. You study Thomas's face. He looks back at you with the calm expression of a man who has served 3 lords and survived by understanding what needs to be done without requiring explicit instruction for every detail. Marjorie is competent, you say. She is, my lord, Thomas says. As is Peter, though Peter does not yet understand what competence under audit requires. He will need to be told to say nothing unless directly questioned, and to answer only what is asked without elaboration. I will speak to him, you say. Or I will, Thomas says. Whichever you prefer. But it should be done today, before Sir Edmund arrives and Peter has the opportunity to volunteer information that seems helpful, but is actually damaging. You nod. Do it this afternoon. After we walk the storehouses. Yes, my lord. You return to the kitchen together. Marjorie has finished shaping the loaves. They sit on the board, ready for the oven. Peter crouches beside the hearth, watching the fire with the focused attention of someone whose job is to maintain consistent heat without wasting fuel. Peter, you say. He scrambles to his feet. My lord? Thomas will speak with you this afternoon, you say. About Sir Edmund's arrival, about what you will say if questioned. Listen to him carefully, do exactly as he instructs. Peter's eyes widen. Am I in trouble, my lord? No, you say. You are being prepared. There is a difference. He nods quickly. Yes, my lord. You turn to Marjorie. The bread is ready? It is, she says. Oven's hot. They'll bake through in an hour. Good. You look at the loaves again. 12 identical shapes. 3 days of allocation. The arithmetic is clear enough. You climb back to the hall with Thomas. The wind still blows from the north. The clouds are lower now. The snow will fall tonight. By morning the courtyard will be white, and the road from London will be harder, and Sir Edmund will be 1 day closer. 69 hours remain. You cross the courtyard at mid-morning with Thomas beside you. The wind has died down, but the cold has deepened. The still cold that precedes snow, when the air itself seems to be waiting for something to break. Your keys rattle against your belt. You have already selected the correct one by touch, the iron shaft worn smooth from 11 years of use. The first storehouse stands 30 paces from the keep's outer door, a low stone structure, with a slate roof and no windows. It was built to hold grain in darkness and cold, because darkness and cold preserve what light and warmth would spoil. You fit the key into the lock, turn it. The mechanism resists for a moment. The cold has stiffened the iron, then releases. You push the door open. The smell reaches you first. Grain and wood, and the particular dryness of a sealed space that has held its contents undisturbed for weeks. No rot, no damp. You step inside. Thomas follows. The door remains open behind you, providing enough grey light to see by. 41 barrels line the western wall, stacked 3 high. Each one is marked with the month and contents in your handwriting. October barley. September wheat. August oats. The harvest that came before the harvest failed. You walk to the first stack. Press your hand against the top barrel. The wood is cold. The seal is intact. Sir Edmund will count them, you say. He will verify that 41 barrels are present. He will check the seals. He will compare the contents notation against the ledger entry. He will not open them. Thomas stands beside you. And if he asks to open them, then we open them, you say. But we open the ones we choose, not the ones he chooses. If he requests inspection of a specific barrel, you ask which contents he wishes to verify. If he says barley, we open the October barley from the top of the first stack, the one we know is full. If he says wheat, we open the September wheat from the middle of the second stack. We control which barrels are examined. And if he insists on choosing, then we allow it, you say. But we express mild confusion about why he would need to verify contents when the seals are intact and the ledger entries are clear. We make the request sound unusual. Not forbidden. Unusual. Auditors do not like appearing overly suspicious without cause. It suggests they are uncertain of their own judgment. Thomas nods slowly. And the barrels that are not quite full. You walk to the third stack, count down. The second barrel from the bottom. You tap it with your knuckle. This one. Wheat. Took water damage from a leak in the cart during transport. We removed the damaged grain. The barrel is now 7/8 full instead of completely full. The weight is lighter, but not dramatically lighter. If lifted, it will feel like a barrel with grain in it. If opened, it will look like a barrel with grain in it, because the grain is packed to the top and appears full unless measured precisely. How much is missing? Half a bushel, you say, maybe slightly more. Across the entire storehouse we are short by 3.5 bushels total. This is the shortfall I have concealed through strategic packing and careful arrangement. It is not the full 43-bushel shortfall that exists across all 3 storehouses and the kitchen reserves combined. But it is the portion of the shortfall that lives in this specific building. Thomas looks at the barrels. 3.5 bushels. That is nearly a week of rations for the full household. It is, you say, which is why the household is eating reduced portions. The shortfall is real. The rationing compensates for it. What Sir Edmund will verify is that the ledger matches the physical count. The ledger says 41 barrels. 41 barrels are present. The ledger does not specify that each barrel must be full to the brim. It specifies that the barrels exist and contain the stated grain type. Both statements are true. It is theatre, Thomas says quietly. It is estate management under audit, you say. The difference is semantic. You walk the perimeter of the storehouse. The walls are solid stone, no cracks, no gaps where wind or moisture could enter. The roof is tight. No water stains on the barrels below. No smell of rot or mold. The floor is packed earth, dry and level. Everything Sir Edmund will see in this building will indicate competent storage practices and proper maintenance. What he will not see is the calculation you performed 9 days ago when you counted the final barrel and realized the harvest had failed and decided that concealment was preferable to transparency. That calculation lives in your head, not in the ledger. The ledger shows only what can be proven, the calculation shows what must be hidden. You return to the door. Thomas follows. Outside, the courtyard is empty. The grey sky presses down. The first snowflakes begin to fall, small and dry, the kind that precedes heavier snow by several hours. The second storehouse, you say. We inspect it now. Then the third. Then the grain vault beneath the chapel. Sir Edmund will see all of them. I want you to see them first. I want you to know what is in each building before he asks you. Thomas nods. I understand, my lord. You lock the first storehouse door. Test the lock. Walk across the courtyard to the second building. The snow falls harder now. Not a storm yet, just the beginning. By nightfall it will cover the ground. By morning the courtyard will be white, and the road from London will be slow, and Sir Edmund will be closer. 68 hours remain. You have 2 storehouses left to inspect, a bailiff to brief, and a scullery boy to instruct on the value of silence. The keys are cold against your palm. You find the next one by touch. Fit it into the second lock. Turn. The door opens into darkness. You step inside. Thomas follows. Behind you, through the open door, the snow falls in the grey morning light. The study is colder than the kitchen was. You notice this as you close the door behind you. The lamp in your hand throws light onto the desk, onto the ledger waiting there. Ink. Vellum. Numbers written in 3 different hands across the last 5 months. You set the lamp down. The flame steadies. The ledger sits where you left it 6 hours ago, open to the grain accounts. The numbers have not changed in your absence. They will not change now. You pull the chair back, sit. The wood is cold through your clothing. The first page shows August yields. Thomas the Old Bailiff recorded these. His hand is careful, each numeral formed with the deliberation of a man who learned letters late and never stopped being proud of it. 17 bushels from the north field. 21 from the east. The totals march down the margin in neat rows. September. Your own hand now. The numbers tighten. 14 bushels. 18. The rain came early that month. You remember writing these figures by candlelight while water ran down the window panes. October. Agnes the grainkeeper took over the counts when the rot appeared. Her script is smaller, more efficient. 10 bushels. 7. Then the word blight, written once in the margin and never repeated. You turn the page. The final count sits at the bottom of the November entries. Total stores, 412 bushels. Household population, 207 souls. Required winter reserve to maintain Crown tax obligation while feeding the estate until March, 630 bushels. The shortfall is 218 bushels. You have known this number for 10 days, it has not become easier to look at. The auditor's training is simple. He will ask to see the ledger. He will ask to see the storehouses. He will compare what the book claims exists against what the barrels actually hold. Any discrepancy triggers a secondary inspection. Secondary inspections involve opening every barrel, measuring every sack, and questioning under oath every person who touched the counts. Medieval estate auditing is the 13th century equivalent of getting your taxes investigated when you definitely did some creative accounting with your home office deduction. Except instead of penalties and fines, the outcome is you lose your entire estate and possibly get a criminal record that follows you to your grave. You run your finger down the September entries. Thomas's count for the Northfield shows 17 bushels. You were there for that harvest. You remember the feel of grain running through your hands, the way it filled half a cart instead of 3/4. 17 bushels was optimistic. 15 would have been accurate. But Thomas is loyal. Thomas rounds up when the numbers look thin because Thomas believes his lord deserves good news. October. Agnes recorded 10 bushels from the west field. You checked that field yourself the day after she wrote the entry. The actual yield was 8 bushels. Agnes added 2 because she knew the Crown assessment was coming, and she thought you would want the margin. Everyone tried to help. Everyone made the numbers look better than they were. And now the ledger shows a harvest that never quite existed, and an auditor is coming who will notice the moment he sees a barrel that should be full, but sits 3 inches lower than the book claims. Sir Edmund of York will notice. He closed 6 northern estates this season. He has built 11 years of reputation on finding discrepancies other auditors miss. You could burn this ledger, write a new one with numbers that match what actually sits in the storehouses right now. But Sir Edmund carries copies of the preliminary counts filed with the Exchequer in August, the numbers you optimistically reported when the fields were still green. Before the rain, before the blight, before reality adjusted your projections downward in increments you did not report, because each month you believed the next month would compensate. The Crown already knows what you promised to have. Sir Edmund is coming to verify you kept that promise. You close the ledger, the binding creaks. Outside the wind has picked up, you hear it testing the shutters. The lamp flame bends slightly, recovers. 66 hours remain. You need to decide which version of the numbers to defend. The optimistic counts that kept morale high and taxes current. Or the accurate counts that would require admitting you have been managing a failing estate for 3 months while reporting stability. Neither answer survives an audit that opens every barrel. The lamp burns steady, the ledger sits closed, the wind continues. You do not open the book again, not yet. The guardroom smells of leather and rust, and men who have been wearing the same wool for too many weeks. You step inside. The lamp shows 4 pallets along the wall, 3 occupied. The 4th man is on watch at the gate. The sleeping guards do not wake. You are not trying to wake them. You cross to the weapons rack, 6 spears, 4 swords, 2 crossbows with their strings removed for storage. Everything in its designated place, because the last time Sir Edmund audited an estate in Yorkshire, he noted in his report that poorly maintained arms indicated poor discipline, and poor discipline indicated a household that could not be trusted to manage resources properly. The spears are clean. You check the shafts for cracks. None. The swords hang in their sheaths, blades oiled last week when you ordered the general inspection. 1 crossbow has a loose stirrup mount. You make a mental note. It will be repaired by tomorrow. Before the auditor arrives. Before he inspects this room and finds reason to question your attention to detail. The guard by the window shifts in his sleep, mutters something, settles. You move to the supply chest, lift the lid slowly. The hinges are well greased, no sound. Inside, 12 coils of rope, a box of tinder, 3 spare belts. A whetstone, wrapped in cloth. Beneath that, the items you placed here yourself 6 days ago, after dismissing the kitchen staff you could not afford to feed through winter. 2 small leather purses. Severance pay for servants who left quietly with stories you provided. 1 purse is lighter now than it was. You used part of that coin yesterday to send a rider to Richmond with instructions to locate the cooper's daughter and confirm she has not spoken to anyone about the harvest counts she overheard in September. The rider has not returned. You close the chest. The room is darker at floor level where the lamplight does not quite reach. 1 guard snores. A steady rhythm. The kind of sound that means deep sleep, no awareness. These men will be questioned when Sir Edmund arrives. They will be asked what they have seen, what they have heard, whether the household has maintained normal routines, or shown signs of crisis management. They will be asked if any servants departed suddenly, if any orders seemed unusual, if the lord of the keep appeared anxious. You have chosen these 4 carefully. All born on Thornwold lands. All with families housed in the estate cottages. All with 30 years of loyalty that is also 30 years of dependence on your continued authority. They will say what needs to be said, probably. The guard by the window turns over, his hand falls to the floor, rests there. You check the water barrel in the corner. 3/4 full, sufficient. The dipper hangs on its hook, clean. On the shelf above the pallets, a row of small personal items, a carved wooden bird, a leather pouch containing dice, a saint's medal on a cord. Things that prove men live here, not just bodies performing duty. Sir Edmund will see this room. He will note the tidiness, the maintained equipment, the absence of excess. It will count in your favor if everything else holds. You step back toward the door. The window shows grey sky. Dawn is coming, though you cannot see the sun yet. Snow continues to fall, light, steady. 65 hours. You leave the guardroom. The door closes behind you with the softest click of iron on iron. Inside, the snoring continues. Outside, the courtyard waits. The chapel bell has not rung for lauds yet. You have time before the household wakes. You cross toward the inner keep, lamplight swinging with your stride. Thomas the old bailiff is already awake when you reach his quarters. You see candlelight under his door before you knock. Enter, my lord. The room is small. A bed, a chest, a table with a candle and a cup. Thomas sits at the table in his shirt and hose. No boots yet. He begins to rise. Sit, you say. He sits. You close the door, set your lamp on the chest. The 2 lights make the room almost warm. Thomas watches you. He is 61 years old. He was bailiff here when your father held Thornwold, and for 12 years before that under your grandfather. His face has the kind of deep lines that come from smiling often and worrying constantly. Right now he is doing neither. The ledger, you say? My lord. Your count for the Northfield in August, 17 bushels. Thomas nods slowly. Aye, my lord, 17. I was there when we loaded the carts. I remember. As do I, my lord. You pull the other chair back. Sit across from him. How many bushels, Thomas? His hands rest on the table. They do not move. My lord, I counted 17. Rounded. A pause, then. Perhaps rounded, my lord. The final cart was not quite full. I judged it close enough. How close? Close enough that the difference seemed... He stops, starts again. The harvest was thin, my lord. You had already seen that. I did not wish to record a number that would cause unnecessary concern when the later fields might compensate. They did not compensate. No, my lord. You lean back. The chair creaks. When Sir Edmund asks to see the accounts, he will compare the ledger against the physical stores. If the numbers do not match, he will ask why. What will you say? Thomas looks at the candle, then at you. I will say I counted accurately at the time of harvest, my lord. But what the ledger shows is what we had in August. And if he asks what happened between August and November, Thomas's hands finally move. He folds them together. Winter consumption, my lord. Normal usage. Some spoilage from the blight. Enough spoilage to account for the shortfall. If the shortfall is noted, my lord, and I am asked directly, I will say that I recorded what I counted, that any loss occurred after the grain left my custody. It is a good answer. It is also a lie that will not hold if Sir Edmund decides to question you separately, and compare testimonies. You reach into your shirt, pull out the folded paper you have carried since yesterday, set it on the table between you. This is the story, you say. The harvest met projections through September. In early October, an inspection revealed blight in 3 storage barrels. We destroyed the affected grain immediately to prevent spread. The loss was recorded as a separate line item to distinguish blight damage from normal consumption. When Sir Edmund asks about discrepancies, we show him the blight notation and explain that the affected barrels were disposed of before they could contaminate the remaining stores. Thomas looks at the paper, does not touch it. The blight was real, you continue. Agnes found it, she can confirm. The disposal was necessary. Everything documented. The shortfall becomes a justified loss rather than accounting error. And the August numbers, my lord? Accurate as recorded. 17 bushels from the North Field. We stand by the counts, the blight explains the gap. Thomas picks up the paper, unfolds it, reads slowly. Managing a medieval estate with a loyal but slightly too optimistic bailiff is the 13th century equivalent of realizing your accountant has been rounding up on your quarterly reports for 2 years, and now the IRS is coming. Except instead of working together to file an amended return, you are both constructing a coordinated narrative about inventory loss that must hold under professional interrogation, or you both lose everything. The candle between you gutters, recovers. This is the story, Thomas says, not a question. This is the story. He folds the paper. Sets it down precisely where you placed it. I will remember it, my lord. You will be asked about dismissed servants. Routine winter reduction, my lord. We release staff every November when fieldwork ends. This year was no different. You will be asked if they were compensated. Standard severance, my lord. Coin and a week's ration. All departed on good terms. You will be asked if any seemed unhappy. Thomas meets your eyes. None that I observed, my lord. You stand. Thomas starts to rise. You wave him down. The story does not change, you say. Blight loss. Documented, justified. Normal winter staffing. Everything routine. Yes, my lord. Sir Edmund will try to find cracks. He is trained to create doubt, to make you question your own memory. You will not question it. No, my lord. You pick up your lamp. The flame is lower now. Needs oil soon. 64 hours, you say. Thomas nods. I will be ready, my lord. You open the door. Cold air rushes in. Behind you, Thomas remains at his table, the paper in front of him, the candle burning down. You step into the corridor. The door closes. Dawn is coming. You can feel it in the quality of the darkness. Still black but thinning. You have briefed Thomas. Next is Marjorie the cook, then Agnes, then the guards. Everyone will know the story. Everyone will repeat it. And somewhere on the road from York, Sir Edmund of the Crown Revenue continues north. 58 hours remain. You stand on the north rampart where the wind comes unobstructed across 20 miles of moor. It carries the smell of snow that has not yet fallen, and beneath that, something sharper. The iron scent of exposed stone, where the harvest should have covered the fields but didn't. Below, the courtyard is quiet. The dismissed servants left at dawn. 3 of them. They know where the grain stores are because they helped fill them in September. They know how the counts were conducted because they stood witness when Agnes measured each bushel. They know the estate is under rationing because yesterday's announcement was posted on every door. What they don't know yet is that their silence matters. Thomas is below, waiting at the gate with the travel coins you authorized. The arrangement is simple. 3 months, wages, a letter of reference, and a promise that if they find work south of Durham, you will not object to their departure. The letter does not mention rationing. It does not mention the audit. It describes capable workers released due to seasonal reduction in household needs. This is what estate management looks like, when an auditor is 9 days from your gate, and every person who leaves takes information with them. You watch Thomas hand over the coins. The transaction is brief, no embraces, no speeches. One of them, the youngest, glances back at the keep before turning south on the road. The other 2 move faster, as if distance is something they have been calculating since the announcement. They will reach Durham in 4 days if the weather holds. Sir Edmund will reach your gate in 58 hours regardless of weather, because Crown circuits do not wait for conditions to improve. The wind sharpens. You pull your cloak tighter and consider the mathematics of silence. 3 people. 3 different roads, probably. 3 separate opportunities to mention in a tavern or a hiring hall that Thornwold Keep just dismissed workers the same week it posted ration schedules. Not illegal. Not even unusual in November. But the kind of detail that makes an auditor pause when he's looking for discrepancies. And Sir Edmund of York has built 11 years of royal service on noticing things other men dismiss as unremarkable. Below, Thomas closes the gate and turns back toward the hall. His shoulders are set in the posture of a man who has completed an unpleasant task correctly. You remain on the rampart. The wind does not stop. 58 hours is 2 days and 10 hours, minus the time you will spend sleeping, minus the hours required for the next stage of preparation. The storehouse inspection is complete. The ledger problem is contained. The kitchen rations are locked and documented. What remains is tracking. Not following them. You don't have the men or the justification, but knowing where they go, knowing if they stay silent or speak. Knowing whether the story they carry south matches the story you have prepared for Sir Edmund's arrival. You descend the rampart stairs and cross toward the hall. The wind follows you across the courtyard, pushing at your back. It smells of winter and stone, and the kind of cold that settles into a place and does not leave until spring. Inside, the hall is warmer. Thomas is already there, standing beside the hearth. "Done, my lord," he says. "How did they take it?" "Quiet." The youngest asked if there would be work in spring. What did you tell him? That it would depend on the harvest. You nod. It is the correct answer. Non-committal. True in the most technical sense. Thomas shifts his weight. They'll talk, my lord, not from malice, but they'll talk. I know. And if Sir Edmund hears, then we'll deal with what he hears when he arrives. You move toward the desk where the ledger still sits, closed. What matters is what we can prove, not what 3 dismissed workers mention in passing to a stranger. Thomas considers this, then nods. The wind against the shutters makes a sound like rope pulled taut. Somewhere in the keep, a door closes. The day continues its slow measured movement toward the hour when Sir Edmund of York will arrive at your gate, with questions you have spent 58 hours preparing to answer. 54 hours remain. The scullery is the warmest room in the keep at this hour, and the loudest. Steam rises from 3 iron cauldrons, where Marjorie is reducing bone stock into something that will stretch through December. The boy Peter stands at the washing trough with his hands red from lye soap and cold water, scrubbing at a copper pot that has seen harder use than it was built for. You are here because yesterday's ration schedule created a problem that will become visible the moment Sir Edmund asks to inspect the kitchen. My lord. Marjorie does not turn from the cauldron. Her voice carries the particular flatness of a woman who has already guessed why you've come. The ration schedule, you say? Aye. It's holding. For now. She stirs the stock with a long wooden paddle, but the boy's been asking questions. Peter's hands slow at the washing trough. He does not turn around. What kind of questions, you ask? The kind that matter when a Crown Auditor is asking them second. Marjorie sets the paddle aside and finally looks at you. He wants to know why we're measuring flour twice before it goes to the bakehouse. And why the cheese rations dropped the same week we sent 3 workers south with full wages and travel coins. You glance at Peter. His shoulders are rigid, but he keeps scrubbing. Peter, you say? He turns. 14, maybe 15. Old enough to understand what discretion means. Young enough to think honesty is always the safer choice. You've been here how long, you ask? 2 years, my lord, since my mother died. And in those 2 years, has this household ever shorted your meals? No, my lord. Has anyone struck you for asking questions about your work? No, my lord. Then, understand this. You move closer, but not so close that it feels like threat. In 2 days, a man named Sir Edmund of York will arrive here, with the authority to question everyone in this keep under oath. He will ask you about the grain stores, the ration schedules, and why 3 workers were dismissed the same week we tightened the kitchen measurements. What you tell him matters. Peter's eyes widen slightly. What should I say, my lord? The truth, you say. But the truth is this. Rations were adjusted because the harvest yield was 20% below projection, and we are managing stores to ensure no one goes hungry through winter. Workers were dismissed because seasonal labor requirements decrease in November, and we released them early with full compensation so they could find positions before the roads became impassable. The kitchen measures twice because accuracy prevents waste, and waste is poor stewardship. You pause, let him hear the shape of it. That's all true, Peter. Every word. But Sir Edmund will be listening for what you don't say as much as what you do. If you sound nervous, he'll assume you're hiding something. If you sound rehearsed, he'll assume you were coached to lie. So when he asks, and he will ask, you answer simply. You tell him the rations are fair, the measurements are careful, and you've never seen anyone in this household go without what they need. Peter swallows. Nods. Marjorie steps in. He'll do fine, my lord. I'll make sure of it. You turn to her. And you? I've been cooking in noble houses for 26 years, my lord. I know what auditors want to hear. She picks up the paddle again. They want to hear that the household runs clean, the measurements are exact, and the cook isn't watering the soup to hide a shortage. Good. Peter returns to the washing trough. The scrubbing resumes, faster now, as if motion can burn off nervousness. You move toward the door, then pause. Marjorie. One more thing. My lord? If Sir Edmund asks to inspect the storeroom locks, tell him Agnes holds the only keys, and that no one enters without her inventory record. Don't volunteer anything else. Understood, my lord. You step out into the corridor. The air is colder here, sharp enough to clear the steam smell from your lungs. Somewhere above, a shutter rattles in the wind. 54 hours is not enough time to prepare for every question Sir Edmund might ask. But it is enough time to make sure the people he questions understand what silence costs and what honesty requires. The boy will hold. Marjorie will make sure of it. And if he doesn't, if nerves or conscience or simple fear make him say more than he should, you will already have documented the explanation, witnessed by Thomas, recorded in the estate log, dated 2 days before Sir Edmund's arrival. That is what preparation looks like when an auditor is 54 hours from your gate, and every conversation in your household is a potential liability. 50 hours remain. The woolshed stands apart from the main keep, downwind for reasons that become obvious the moment you step inside. The smell is thick, lanolin and damp fleece, and the particular mustiness of fiber stored through autumn rain. 43 bales are stacked along the north wall, each one wrapped in oiled canvas and marked with the date of shearing. You are here because wool is the second largest line item in the estate ledger after grain, and Sir Edmund of York will know that before he arrives. Agnes is already waiting, standing beside a bale with her inventory tablet, an expression that suggests she has spent the morning recounting things that were already counted correctly the first time. My lord, she says. The wool records, you say. Complete. 43 bales. 268 stone total weight. Shearing dates, storage dates, and moisture inspection notes for each bale. Cross-referenced with the spring livestock count and the October market prices. She hands you the tablet. The numbers are clean. No erasures. No corrections. Each entry is dated and initialed in Agnes's precise hand. You scan the columns. The weight projections match the actual yield. Within 4%. I've noted the variance as expected loss due to moisture reduction during storage. Good. You hand the tablet back. If Sir Edmund asks to see the bales directly, they're accessible. I can pull any bale for inspection within 10 minutes and provide the matching record. You nod. This is exactly the kind of preparedness that keeps an audit from becoming an interrogation. One problem, my lord. Agnes sets the tablet on a nearby work table. The spring shearing projection for next year. What about it? It's in the ledger as 280 stone. But we lost 6 breeding ewes to the flux in August, and the lambing yield last spring was down 12% from the prior year. If Sir Edmund compares our current flock size to the projection, he'll see a gap. You consider this. What's the actual projected yield for next spring? 240 stone. Maybe 250 if the winter is mild and we don't lose more ewes. Then we adjust the ledger projection now, before he arrives. Agnes shakes her head. That's a problem, my lord. The spring projection was recorded in March and witnessed by Thomas. If we change it now, it looks like we're manipulating records to hide a shortfall. But if we don't change it, it looks like we're projecting yields we know we can't meet. You walk to the north wall and examine the bales. The canvas is good quality, the binding's tight. No visible moisture damage. No signs of pest infiltration. Everything here says competent stewardship. Except the numbers in the spring ledger that no longer match reality. Can we document the flock losses, you ask? Already done. 8 ewes total. 6 to flux. 2 to difficult lambing. Recorded in the livestock log with dates and descriptions. Thomas witnessed the flux deaths. I witnessed the lambing. Then we leave the spring projection as written and prepare a supplemental note explaining the reduction in flock size, dated today, witnessed by both of you. Attached to the livestock log. Agnes nods slowly. That could work. It shows we're tracking the issue and adjusting expectations in real time. It also shows we're not trying to hide anything. You turn back to her. If Sir Edmund questions the discrepancy, we tell him the truth. The projection was accurate when it was made. The flock losses were documented as they occurred, and the revised projection is already recorded in the livestock log. We're not concealing a shortfall, we're managing one. Aye, my lord. Agnes picks up the tablet again. I'll draft the supplemental note this afternoon. Thomas can witness it before supper. You move toward the door, then pause. The wind outside has picked up again, rattling the shed's loose boards. Agnes. My lord. When Sir Edmund inspects these bales, he's going to be looking for moisture damage, pest infiltration or signs that we've overstated the weight to inflate the ledger value. He won't find any of those things, my lord. I know. But he'll also be listening to how you answer his questions. If you sound defensive, he'll assume you're hiding something. If you sound too confident, he'll assume you're lying. So when he asks about the wool stores, you show him the bales, you hand him the inventory tablet, and you let the records speak for themselves. Agnes meets your eyes. Understood, my lord. You step outside. The wind cuts across the courtyard, carrying the smell of the moors and the sharper scent of smoke from the hall chimneys. 50 hours is just over 2 days, minus the hours you'll spend sleeping, minus the time required for the remaining inspections. The wool count is clean. The records match the physical inventory. The flock losses are documented. What remains is making sure that every other line in the estate ledger can withstand the same level of scrutiny. Because Sir Edmund of York did not close 6 northern estates this season, by accepting the first answer he was given. He will ask the same question 3 different ways, and he will compare the answers for inconsistencies. That is what Crown auditors do when their career advancement depends on finding what other men miss. 48 hours remain. You find Marjorie in the lower kitchen alone at the table where bread was rationed 3 days ago. The lamplight catches the edge of the iron ring she holds. 7 keys, each one labelled in Agnes's careful hand before Agnes left. Storehouse, cellar, grain lock, salt vault. The ones that matter. She looks up when you enter. No surprise in her face. Just the flat acknowledgement of someone who has been waiting for this conversation since the moment you handed her the ring. The keys work, you say. Tested them yesterday. She sets the ring on the table. It does not clatter. She placed it deliberately. All 7. You pull the stool across from her. The wood scraped stone. Outside, through the narrow window, snow falls in the pre-dawn grey. It has been falling since midnight. Not heavy. Steady. Sir Edmund arrives in 2 days, you say. He will ask to see the storehouses. He will ask who holds the keys. He will ask how long you have held them. 3 days, Marjorie says, since Agnes left. He will ask why Agnes left. Family emergency, her sister in Durham. Marjorie's tone does not shift. She is repeating something she has already practiced. She asked leave. You granted it. He will ask if you were present when the grain was counted. I was not. He will ask if you have opened the storehouses since Agnes left. Twice. Once to verify inventory on your orders. Once to prepare for his inspection. You watch her face. No hesitation, no question about whether the story holds. She has already decided it holds because it must. He will ask what you found when you verified inventory, you say. This is the part that matters. Marjorie picks up one of the keys, turns it in her hand. The metal is dark with age and use. I found what the ledger says I found. 47 bushels in the main store. 12 in the locked cellar. Salt reserve sufficient for winter. Smoked meat counted and recorded. He will ask if the counts matched Agnes's records. They matched. Exactly. Exactly. You let the silence hold. Outside the snow continues. Somewhere in the keep, a shutter bangs once, then stops. Someone latched it. Marjorie, you say. If the numbers do not match exactly, he will know someone adjusted them. She sets the key down, looks at you directly. Then the numbers match exactly. This is what trust looks like when it is built on the understanding that there is no alternative. You did not ask Marjorie if she could hold this story. You told her she would. She has decided she will. The gap between those two facts is what keeps estates functioning when auditors arrive. He may separate you from Thomas during questioning, you say. He may ask the same questions in different ways. He may tell you Thomas has already given a different answer to see if you change yours. Thomas will not give a different answer. How do you know? Because Thomas does not improvise. Marjorie's voice is flat, certain. He repeats what he is told to repeat. You told him what to repeat. He will repeat it. This is also what trust looks like, not faith in character, clarity about pattern. You stand. The stool scrapes again. When Sir Edmund asks to see the storehouses, you will accompany him. You will open each lock. You will stand beside him while he counts. You will not volunteer information. You will answer only what he asks. Understood. If he finds a discrepancy, you will not know why it exists. Agnes kept the detailed records. You have only verified what the ledger shows. Understood. You pick up the lamp. The keys remain on the table, iron against wood, each one a locked door that must open exactly when required and reveal exactly what it must reveal. Marjorie does not move. She is still holding the ring when you reach the door. My lord, she says. You turn. The bread rationing, if he asks. Tell him it was implemented as a winter measure to ensure supply lasts until spring. Precautionary, prudent. Not because the harvest failed. The harvest yield was below projection. The rationing is a response to prudent management, not crisis. You meet her eyes. Those are different facts. Marjorie nods once. She understands that Sir Edmund will be looking for crisis. You are offering him prudence. The difference between those two things is survival. The lamp throws long shadows across the stone as you climb the stairs back toward the hall. 48 hours. Marjorie has her story. Thomas has his. The ledger has been reconciled. The storehouses will open when required. Sir Edmund closed 6 northern estates this season. His reports are thorough. His methods are procedural. His arrival is mandated by a circuit schedule drafted in York 3 months ago, signed by the Exchequer, immune to delay. What remains is whether the gaps hold when a man trained in finding them begins to press. The ledger sits open on the desk in the North Tower. You have been staring at it for 20 minutes. The numbers have not changed. Thomas's count, 17 bushels from the North Field. Agnes's receipt, 17 bushels stored. Your calculation, 14 bushels distributed across first winter rations. Balance remaining, 3 bushels unaccounted for. 3 bushels is not a catastrophic gap. It is the kind of minor discrepancy that happens when grain is measured by hand, when clerks round differently, when moisture content shifts between field and storehouse. Under normal circumstances it would be a footnote, a correction made in margin, forgotten. Sir Edmund does not deal in normal circumstances. He deals in patterns of minor discrepancies that, when examined together, reveal systematic mismanagement. 3 bushels here. 2 there. 5 somewhere else. By the time he finishes his inspection, the gaps add up to a case. You pull the field records toward you. Thomas's handwriting careful and slow. He writes the way men write, when they know the words will be read by someone who matters. Every letter formed deliberately. No crossed-out errors. No hasty corrections. The North Field delivered 17 bushels on October 3rd. You check Agnes's receipt book. Same date, same count, 17 bushels received, verified, stored. You check the distribution log. October 15th, 14 bushels allocated to first ration cycle. The gap is real. You sit back, the lamp flickers. Outside, dawn is breaking, grey and cold. The snow has stopped. The courtyard below is empty except for 2 guards walking their circuit, shoulders hunched against the wind. 3 options. 1. Leave the gap as is. When Sir Edmund finds it, and he will, claim measurement variance. Defend it as normal agricultural margin. This is the truth, and it is also the answer that invites scrutiny of every other number in the ledger. 2. Adjust the field count down to 14. Make the discrepancy disappear. This requires altering Thomas's entry, which means the ink will not match, which means Sir Edmund will see it was changed, which means the adjustment looks like concealment. 3. Adjust the distribution up to 17. Add 3 bushels to the ration cycle that were not actually distributed. This balances the ledger but creates a separate problem. If Sir Edmund questions the households, they will report receiving 14, not 17. You stand. Walk to the window. The guards below have stopped. One is pointing toward the gate, the other shakes his head. They resume walking. 46 hours now. The auditor is on schedule. His circuit does not bend. Thomas's handwriting does not lie. That is its value. When Sir Edmund examines the field records, he will see the same careful formation of letters, the same measured script, the same absence of alteration. The field count is defensible, because Thomas does not make errors in transcription. The distribution log is your handwriting. You wrote those numbers yourself when Agnes brought you the household requests. 14 bushels, allocated across 43 families, calculated to last until the next ration cycle. If anyone's handwriting can be questioned, it is yours. You are the Lord. You make the allocations. If there is an error, it is an administrative error in your documentation, not a failure in Thomas's fieldwork. You return to the desk, pick up the quill, dip it in the ink Agnes left behind when she departed. The distribution log shows 14 bushels. You cross it out. Not heavily. 1 clean line. Then, beside it, 17. You write the correction in the margin. Clerical error. Original allocation was 17 bushels, distributed across revised household count. The ink dries. The correction looks exactly like what it is. An administrative amendment made after the fact. But it is your amendment, in your hand, in the record you keep. Not Thomas's. Not Agnes's. Sir Edmund will see it. He will ask about it. You will explain it was a clerical error caught during your own review in preparation for his inspection. You found the discrepancy. You corrected it. You documented the correction transparently. This is what competent estate management looks like. The alternative is letting him find an unexplained gap and draw his own conclusions about what it means. You close the ledger. The correction is made. The numbers now match from field to storehouse to distribution. 17 bushels in, 17 bushels out, no gap. The lamp is burning low. You trim the wick. Outside, the dawn is fully arrived now, pale and cold. Somewhere on the road from York, Sir Edmund continues north. His saddlebags contain blank forms for documenting findings. His authority comes from the Exchequer. His reputation depends on what those forms say when he returns. The correction holds. The story holds. What remains is whether you do. The hall is colder than it should be this late in the morning. You cross toward the hearth, where the banked coals from last night have been rebuilt into a fire that gives more light than heat. Peter is there, crouched beside the woodbox counting logs. He looks up when you approach. His face is thinner than it was 2 weeks ago. Everyone's face is thinner. That is what rationing does. It works because it must. 12 logs left, Peter says, until the next delivery. When is the next delivery? 3 days. You kneel beside him. The wood is split oak, dense and slow burning. Good for overnight fires when you need heat that lasts, not flame that burns fast. Show me how you're counting them. Peter points. 1 for the hall hearth each night. 1 for the kitchen, that's 2 per day. 12 logs means 6 days if we maintain current use. And if we reduce current use? Peter looks at you. He is 13 years old enough to understand when a question is not about logs. We could go to 1 fire, he says, just the kitchen, let the hall stay cold. For how long? Until the delivery arrives. 3 days. You stand, walk to the hearth. The fire is small, controlled, built to the exact size needed to keep the space livable without wasting fuel. This is what rationing looks like when applied to everything, not just grain, wood, lamp oil, candle wax, heat. Sir Edmund will notice the temperature when he arrives. He will notice which rooms are warm and which are not. He will notice how the fires are built, how the wood is stacked, how the household manages its resources. What he will be looking for is whether the rationing appears systematic or desperate. Systematic management can be defended, desperation cannot. Peter, you say, when Sir Edmund arrives he may walk through the hall, he may ask about the hearth. If he does, what will you tell him? Peter straightens. That we maintain 1 fire in the hall, and 1 in the kitchen, as winter policy, sufficient for household needs. Wood is delivered on schedule. And if he asks why the hall is cold, it is not cold, it is winter, the hearth is proportional. You almost smile. Almost. Peter has learned the language of management without being taught it explicitly. This is what survival teaches, not comfort. Precision. He may ask if rations were reduced, you say. Rations were adjusted to winter allocations, precautionary. Not because of shortage. Not because of shortage. The fire burns low in the hearth. Outside, through the high windows, the sky is grey and flat. No more snow, just cold. When the wood delivery arrives in 3 days, you say, store it in the shed behind the stables. Do not stack it where it is visible from the gate. Sir Edmund will count resources, but he will count what he can see first. Peter nods. He understands. The door to the hall opens. Thomas enters, stamping snow from his boots. He crosses to you, his breath visible in the cold air. The storehouse locks, he says. All functional. Seals intact. Marjorie tested them yesterday. I tested them this morning. Thomas's face is expressionless. She is correct. You meet his eyes. This is the man who will stand beside Sir Edmund and repeat the field counts without variation. Not because he is loyal. Because he is accurate. 46 hours, you say. Thomas nods once. 46 hours. He turns and leaves. The door closes. The cold air lingers. You cross back toward the hearth, where Peter still kneels beside the wood box. The fire burns small and controlled. A system under management. Sir Edmund will see this. He will note it in his report. The question is whether he notes it as evidence of prudent stewardship, or insufficient resources concealed through rationing. The difference between those two interpretations is what you have 46 hours left to control. The hall is quiet. Marjorie is in the kitchen, testing the locks one more time. The ledger is corrected. The story is consistent. What remains is the waiting. Sir Edmund does not arrive early. He does not arrive late. He arrives exactly when the circuit schedule requires. because the schedule is not his to adjust. The fire in the hall will burn through the day, tonight it will be banked again, tomorrow it will burn smaller still. By the time Sir Edmund arrives, the household will look like what it is, a system under management, not crisis. The calculation is clear. The execution is harder. But you have done harder. The scullery boy is awake when you arrive. Not startled awake by your footsteps, already awake sitting near the furnace with his hands spread toward heat that left the coals an hour ago. Peter. 11 years old. Maybe 12. No family left, after the fever took his mother in spring. He sleeps here because the kitchen holds warmth longer than the servants' quarters, and because Marjorie lets him. He stands when he sees you, not quickly. The movement of someone whose joints have stiffened in the cold. My lord. You set the lamp on the table. Sit. He sits. You remain standing, because this is not a conversation between equals. And because standing keeps you from saying things you should not say to a child who has already learned more about scarcity than most adults will know in their lives. Sir Edmund of the Crown Revenue arrives in 2 days, you say. He will ask questions about the household, about the stores, about who knew what and when. Peter's hands are still extended toward the dead coals. Yes, my lord. He may ask you about the grain, about the rations, about conversations you heard in this kitchen. I hear many things, my lord. You pull the other stool closer and sit, eye level now. What you heard does not matter to Sir Edmund. What matters is what you tell him you heard. Peter looks at you. 12 years old and already understanding the difference between truth and testimony. The harvest yield was 20% below projection, you say. Rations were adjusted because stores are managed responsibly. Nothing was hidden, nothing was mismanaged. The adjustments were necessary and proper. Yes, my lord. If Sir Edmund asks whether you heard anyone speak of shortage, you did not. I did not, my lord. If he asks whether rations changed suddenly, they did not. They were adjusted according to winter planning. Yes, my lord. You stand. The conversation is complete. Peter will either remember this or he will not, and if he does not, the failure is yours for trusting a child's memory under pressure from a man who questions children as if they were witnesses before the exchequer. But Peter is still looking at you, waiting for something. The kitchen smells of yesterday's bread and the ash that settles on everything when the furnace burns low. Outside, a dog barks once, the far sound of the night watch passing the stables. Sir Edmund will walk these same flagstones in 46 hours, carrying sealed authority that will turn every conversation into evidence. Peter's hands are still extended toward coals that no longer warm them. You did well this season, you say. Marjorie says the furnace work is better than it was. Thank you, my lord. You take the lamp. The scullery returns to darkness behind you, except for the furnace glow that is not quite gone yet. 46 hours remain. The estate ledger lies open on the desk where you left it 4 hours ago. The ink is dry on the final entry. Grain distributed to the 200 souls of Thornwold Keep according to adjusted winter rations. No discrepancies recorded. All households accounted for. The candle has burned down to a stub. You light another from its dying flame. Sir Edmund will read this ledger. He will trace every entry backward through 3 months of distributions, checking each name against the household roll, each quantity against the calculated need. 11 years in royal service have taught him where stewards hide their mistakes, in rounded numbers, in entries without dates, in distributions that do not account for the children who were born, or the men who left for autumn work and did not return. Your entries account for all of it. The household roll sits beside the ledger, 203 names at summer's end, 200 now. Peter's mother died in spring. her name crossed out with a single line, the date recorded. Thomas the old bailiff's son left for Norwich in October and has not written. His name marked absent, location unknown, with the date of departure. Agnes's daughter married a freeman in the next county, transferred to his household with the date and the name of the receiving steward. Sir Edmund will check these details against parish records. He will ask why Thomas's son left without formal release. He will want to see the marriage agreement for Agnes's daughter. He will count the children in the hall and compare that number to the rations distributed for dependents under 12 years of age. The candle flame bends in a draught from the shuttered window. Somewhere outside, a horse snorts in the stable. The sound of an animal that knows dawn is still 2 hours away, but senses movement in the darkness anyway. You turn back 3 pages in the ledger. September. The original harvest projection, 420 sacks, calculated from the August field survey, before the rain began. The actual yield, recorded in October, 338 sacks. The difference, 82 sacks that existed on paper, but never filled the grain store. No steward can control the weather. Sir Edmund will not care. His mandate is to verify that Crown lands produce their projected revenue. A 20% shortfall in grain means a corresponding shortfall in the tax assessment that Thornwald Keep owes to the Exchequer. If the shortfall resulted from mismanagement, overgenerous rations, poor storage, grain sold quietly to travelling merchants for personal profit, then the estate is classified as failing, and the stewardship is revoked. If the shortfall resulted from weather, and the steward adjusted rations responsibly to match the reduced supply, and no one starved, and the books account for every measure distributed, then the estate is classified as adequately managed under difficult conditions. The difference between these two classifications is the difference between keeping Thornwald Keep and losing everything. You close the ledger. The leather cover is worn smooth where your hands have gripped it during 3 years of entries. Thomas the old bailiff kept this ledger for 20 years before you. His handwriting fills the earlier pages. Blocky and certain, the script of a man who learned letters late, but learned them well. Your own hand is smaller, tighter, the script of someone educated young, and taught that neatness proves competence. Sir Edmund's handwriting, you have heard, is the most precise script in the Crown Revenue Service. He writes his audit reports in a cipher-like clarity that leaves no room for interpretation. Findings are listed without adjectives. Numbers are presented without justification. The final classification appears at the bottom of the last page, a single word in letters so carefully formed they might as well be carved in stone. You open the ledger again, check the arithmetic one more time. 420 projected, 338 actual, distributed across 200 households, at adjusted rations from October through February. 22 weeks at £1 per adult per week. Half rations for children, quarter rations for infants still nursing. The numbers match. The distribution is defensible. The records are complete. Sir Edmund will find nothing, because there is nothing to find except a harvest that failed through no fault of yours, and a household that survived because you cut rations before anyone starved. The candle flame steadies. Outside, the night watch calls the hour 2 bells, the deep sound carrying across the frozen courtyard. 44 hours remain. You turn to a blank page at the back of the ledger. Write one line in the margin where Sir Edmund will not see it unless he looks for margin notes, which auditors sometimes do. All souls present and accounted for. No losses to malnutrition. Rations sufficient. You close the ledger again, lock it in the desk drawer, pocket the key. The household is asleep. The grain store is sealed. The records are complete. What remains now is the waiting, and the performance you will give, when Sir Edmund arrives and begins his questions. The courtyard is empty when you step outside. The sky is still dark, but the stars have begun to fade at the edges. The thin grey light that comes before true dawn and makes everything look colder than it is. Your breath clouds in the air. The flagstones are slick with frost that will not melt until midday, if the sun breaks through at all. Thornwald Keep is silent. 200 souls are asleep in the hall, in the servants' quarters, in the cottages that lean against the outer wall. Thomas the old bailiff is asleep above the stables. Marjorie the cook is asleep in the room behind the kitchen where she has slept for 30 years. Agnes the grainkeeper is asleep in the small house beside the storehouse, her keys under her pillow, where she keeps them every night. Peter is asleep near the furnace, his hands still curled toward warmth that is no longer there. They are asleep because you let them sleep. Because the work is done, the preparations are complete, and there is nothing more to prepare. Sir Edmund of York will arrive in 42 hours. He will walk across these flagstones with the same measured stride he uses when approaching every estate on his circuit. He will knock on the keep's main door with the brass ring that announces Crown authority. He will present his sealed writ to you in the hall, witnessed by Thomas and 2 household men whose names he will record. He will ask his first question before you have finished reading the writ, because Sir Edmund does not waste time on courtesy when the Crown's revenue is at stake. You walk to the centre of the courtyard. Stand where Sir Edmund will stand when he begins his inspection of the outer grounds. From here you can see the grain storehouse, the stables, the well, the gate, the cottages, the narrow path that leads to the chapel. Everything visible. Everything in order. Everything defensible. The well rope creaks in the wind. A shutter bangs somewhere on the 2nd floor. The same shutter that has needed repair since October, and will need repair until spring when the carpenter returns from his brother's holding in the north. Sir Edmund will not care about the shutter. He will care about the grain, the records, the household count, the rations, the stories people tell when questioned separately, and whether those stories align closely enough to indicate truth, or diverge enough to indicate rehearsal. You have done what can be done. The ledger is accurate. The grain store matches the recorded inventory. The household knows what to say and what not to say. Peter knows. Marjorie knows. Agnes knows. Thomas knows. The 200 souls of Thornwald Keep will wake in a few hours and go about their work as if this day is no different from the day before, because for them, it is not different yet. For you, the waiting is almost over. You turn back toward the keep. The door is still ajar. The gap of darkness where you left it when you stepped outside to see the courtyard in the last hour before dawn. Inside, the hall is dark except for the embers in the great hearth. The household will wake soon. Marjorie will start the fires. Peter will haul water. Agnes will unlock the storehouse for the morning distribution. Thomas will check the stables and the outer gate, and report to you as he does every morning, his report delivered in the same 5 sentences he has used for 20 years. The work continues. The routine holds. Thornwald Keep wakes and moves and functions because you made it function, and because 200 people trust that when they wake, there will be bread and heat and order. Sir Edmund will see this when he arrives, or he will not. The outcome is no longer yours to control. You step back inside, close the door. The hall is still silent, still dark, still waiting. 42 hours remain. 38 hours remain. You find Marjorie in the lower kitchen where the bread ovens cool from morning's work. She stands at the counting table with both hands flat on the wood, studying the surface as if something written there might change if she looks long enough. The auditor will ask about kitchen stores, you say. She doesn't look up. He will. He'll ask about flour reserves, salt, rendered fat. The things that don't appear in grain ledgers but tell him how a household actually eats. Yes. You set the folded paper on the table between her hands. The flour count in the spring ledger showed 42 sacks. The autumn inspection recorded 39. 3 sacks distributed across summer kitchen work, bread for harvest crews, Extra baking when the Lord of Redesdale visited in July. Festival loaves for Lammas Day. Marjorie picks up the paper, unfolds it, reads without expression. The fat stores you continue, decreased by 1 barrel between March and October. Normal kitchen consumption, nothing remarkable. The salt brick in the cellar shows appropriate wear for 7 months of curing and preservation. She sets the paper down. These numbers are correct. They match kitchen activity for an estate this size operating under normal conditions. And if he asks why the numbers are so precise? Because keeping exact kitchen counts is what competent stewards do. It's not suspicious to have accurate records, it's suspicious not to have them. Marjorie folds the paper along its original creases, tucks it into her apron pocket. He'll want to see the stores himself. He will. The flour sacks are stacked in the dry cellar exactly as recorded. The salt brick is where it should be. The rendered fat barrel in the cold room shows the level it should show. Everything he can physically verify will match what's written. And the things he can't verify don't exist to be verified. She looks at you directly for the first time. The 3 dismissed kitchen helpers left service in September. Standard autumn reduction when harvest crews disperse, and the household contracts for winter. He'll find that normal. They weren't dismissed because of harvest patterns. No, but that's what the record shows, and it's what you'll confirm if asked. Marjorie's fingers rest on the pocket where the paper sits. If he questions them, they're gone. 2 days south by now. He'd have to chase them, and his circuit doesn't allow detours. You pause. And they were paid their full term. They left with coin and a character reference. They have no reason to contradict the official story even if he finds them. Which is true, as far as it goes. What's also true is that servants who left with pay and references tend not to volunteer information about household difficulties to Crown auditors, because burning a reference is burning your next position. Medieval estate management is partially about what you can prove, and partially about what no one can disprove, unless they're willing to spend 3 weeks tracking down kitchen staff who have already moved on to their next employment. You don't explain this to Marjorie, she already knows. The bread ration, she says, if he asks. It's posted on the hall door, public record. Every soul in this keep knows their daily allowance. The system was implemented in October as a standard winter measure to ensure stores last until spring planting. Prudent household management. He'll find nothing unusual about it. Except the amounts are sufficient for survival and morale maintenance. He's not here to audit nutrition, he's here to audit solvency. Marjorie's hands remain flat on the table. And if someone tells him the rations feel tight, then you explain that tight rations in November prevent starvation in February. That's not mismanagement, that's competence. You let that settle. The difference between a lord who rations in autumn and one who runs out of grain in winter is the difference between an estate that survives and one that gets reclassified as failed stewardship. She nods slowly. He'll believe that. He'll believe it because it's true. You pick up the lamp from the table edge. The kitchen numbers are sound. Your counts are accurate. You've maintained proper records and made reasonable adjustments for seasonal household contraction. There's nothing in your domain that will raise questions he can't answer. Marjorie pulls the paper from her pocket, unfolds it again, studies the numbers in lamplight. I'll have this memorized by morning. Good. You leave her there with the paper and the cooling ovens and 38 hours to become the kind of cook whose kitchen records are boring enough to pass a Crown audit without comment. Behind you, the bread racks stand empty until tomorrow's baking. The flour sacks wait in the cellar, counted and verified. The salt brick shows appropriate wear. Everything that can be measured has been measured correctly. What remains is whether the measurements hold when a man trained to find gaps begins pressing on them. 36 hours now. The keep settles into night watch patterns. Third bell past sunset. The kind of November dark that arrives early and stays late, filling the valley before the last work is finished. You stand in the upper corridor where the account room overlooks the inner ward. Below, Thomas moves between the stable and the grain store with a lamp that marks his path in amber. He checks the bar on the grain store door, tests it, moves on to inspect the stable latch. He has checked both 3 times since evening meal. Sir Edmund of York does not announce his inspections casually. He begins before dawn, examining what household staff assume is secure in darkness. Locks that seem firm at sunset can show gaps by lamplight if the mechanism is worn. Hinges that hold during the day may sag visibly when cold contracts the iron. Thomas knows this because you told him this. Now he checks. You watch his lamp trace the same route again. Stable to grain store to well house to kitchen cellar, each lock tested. Each door marked mentally in the pattern of things that must hold. Above, in the east tower, a single window shows candlelight. Agnes, awake past reasonable hours, likely reviewing the same grain counts she has already memorized. You have seen this before in people who carry weight they cannot set down. They check the thing that keeps them awake, as if checking will make it more secure. It will not make it more secure, but the checking is not about security. It is about what a person does with fear when there is no immediate action to take. The arithmetic is clear. 17 hours of work remain compressed into 36 hours of time. The margin exists. It holds if nothing fractures. But a household is 200 souls, and fractures begin in small places. A servant who speaks carelessly to someone who speaks to someone who mentions it when the auditor asks his questions. A child who repeats something overheard without understanding why it matters. A groom who resents the steward and sees an opportunity in a crown representative's presence. You cannot lock every voice. You can only make truth the easiest story to tell. Thomas finishes his circuit. His lamp pauses at the base of the tower, a brief stillness in the dark, then moves toward the hall where night watch begins. The valley beyond the walls holds no lights. No riders approach, no early arrival. Not yet. You turn from the window. The account room waits with its ledgers arranged in sequence, each opened to the page most likely to draw questions. The morning inspection will begin here. Sir Edmund will enter this room first before the household is fully awake, and he will test whether your numbers hold in the cold evaluation of dawn. They will hold because they are true. The version of truth that survives an audit is not the entire truth. It is the portion of truth that can be verified, supported, cross-referenced against records that existed before the auditor's arrival was announced. The rest, the decisions made in crisis, the measures taken when ledgers alone could not save the estate, lives only in the space between what is written and what is asked. Sir Edmund will ask precise questions. You will give precise answers. The household will confirm what they have been told to confirm, not because they are lying but because the story you have built is the one they now believe. This is not deception, this is stewardship. The candle on the desk burns low. You replace it with a fresh taper from the supply box, trimming the wick before lighting it. Steady light. No smoke. The small actions that mark a house running as it should. Marjorie will memorize her kitchen counts. Agnes will trace her grain records once more before sleep. Thomas will check the locks again at midnight, and again at dawn. And you will remain here, in the room where the audit begins, making certain that every page lies flat, every number aligns, every entry sits exactly where a competent steward's entry should sit. 36 hours. The work is already done. What remains is the performance of work already done. The measured answers. The calm confirmations. The ledgers that open to the right pages without hesitation. Outside, the valley stays dark. Inside, 200 souls sleep or wake or worry as they choose. You straighten the final ledger. Adjust the lamp wick. Check the ink supply in the standish. Everything waits, aligned and ready, for a man who has built his career on finding the things other auditors miss. 34 hours. The grain store stands silent in the hour before dawn, that grey space where night has not quite released the valley but morning has already begun its work elsewhere. You cross the inner ward alone. No lamp. The path is familiar enough that your feet find the stones without thought. Agnes the grainkeeper is already awake. You see her silhouette against the small window of the store's upper level, a shadow moving among shadows, restless in the way of people who have stopped pretending they might sleep. You unlatch the lower door. It swings inward without sound. Thomas oiled the hinges yesterday as part of his endless checking. Inside, the smell of stored wheat and barley, the particular dry cold of a room built for preservation. The sacks stand in their rows, each marked with chalk numbers that correspond to the ledger entries Agnes has carried in her mind for 3 months. She hears you on the stair, doesn't turn. The count is correct. I know. I have checked it 4 times since sunset. I know that as well. She stands before the near row, her hand resting on a sack marked with the October inventory notation. He will count them himself. He will. And if his count does not match mine, it will match. You move to stand beside her, both of you facing the rows of grain that represent the survival of 200 souls through a winter that has not yet truly begun. The numbers are correct because the grain is here. We did not invent the count. We took what remained after the flood, and we recorded it accurately. Agnes's fingers tighten on the rough cloth of the sack. The amount that should be here is not relevant to the audit. He is not here to measure what should be. He is here to verify what is. You pause, letting the stone cold of the room settle between words. The flood was an act of nature, witnessed by 70 people, recorded in the village church register, confirmed by the miller whose wheel was damaged by the same water. Sir Edmund cannot fault you for weather. He can fault me for what I did after. This is true. What Agnes did after was make a decision no grainkeeper should have to make, calculating how much could be saved, how much must be abandoned, and how to explain the gap in a way that would not classify the entire estate as a loss. She made that calculation correctly. The grain that could be moved to dry storage was moved. The grain that was too water damaged to save was disposed of in a manner that left evidence of the disposal. The records show the decision, the action, and the result. What the records do not show is the night Agnes spent in this room, sorting by lamplight, grain by grain, determining which sacks might yet be saved, and which must be counted as gone. That work does not appear in ledgers. It appears only in the fact that the remaining stores are sound, properly dried, showing no evidence of rot or pest. Sir Edmund will see sound grain, correctly stored, accurately counted. He will not see the night of sorting that made sound grain possible. The disposal site, Agnes says, if he asks to see it. Thomas will take him there. The remains of the damaged sacks are still visible, where they were buried beyond the north field. The quantity matches the ledger entry for flood loss. The village reeve witnessed the disposal, and will confirm the event if questioned. And the timing. The flood occurred on August 23rd. The damaged grain was disposed of on August 25th, after full assessment of what could be saved. That is reasonable time for evaluation and decision. He will find nothing suspicious in the sequence. Agnes lowers her hand from the sack, turns to face you in the near dark. You have an answer for everything. I have the truth for everything. The answers are simply the truth arranged in the order he will ask for them. It feels like lying. It is not lying. It is precision. You gesture toward the rows of grain. Every sack he counts will match the number in the ledger. Every entry in the ledger corresponds to a real event. Every event can be verified by a witness who has no reason to contradict the record. That is not deception. That is documentation. She studies your face in the dim light from the window. You believe that. I believe that Sir Edmund of York is here to determine whether this estate is managed competently, or whether the Crown should intervene. The grain in this room, stored properly and counted accurately, is evidence of competent management. Everything else is context he can verify if he chooses, and which will support the same conclusion. Agnes nods slowly, not agreement exactly. Acceptance of the reality that this is the ground on which the next 2 days will be fought. Peter brought fresh candles, she says, for the auditor's inspection. I have them ready on the table. Good. And the ledger is in the account room, opened to the August entries. He will see the flood notation, the assessment, the disposal, the adjusted count. The sequence is clear. She moves to the narrow table beneath the window, where 3 new candles sit in holders, their wicks trimmed and ready. Beside them, a cloth for wiping dust from the sacks before counting. Small preparations that signal a keeper who maintains her domain properly. He arrives tomorrow, Agnes says to the candles. Tomorrow evening, most likely. His circuit schedule puts him at Redesdale this morning, which is 4 hours north if the road is clear. He will inspect there through midday, depart by early afternoon, and reach Thornwold by Compline. And he will begin his inspection at first light the following morning, before the household is fully awake. He will want to see what the estate looks like when no one is prepared for observation. Agnes picks up one of the candles, sets it down. Then I should sleep. You should. Neither of you moves toward the door. Outside, the sky shifts from black to deep blue, the first suggestion of dawn still an hour away. Somewhere in the keep, Peter the scullery boy wakes to begin fire building. Marjorie will rise soon after to start bread. Thomas is likely already awake, running through his mental list of things to check before the house stirs. The 200 souls of Thornwold Keep, sleeping or waking, unaware or aware, moving through the last hours before a Crown auditor arrives, to measure whether their home will continue or be dissolved into administrative language, and reassigned to someone else's authority. You rest your hand briefly on Agnes's shoulder. The count is correct, the storage is sound, your work will speak for itself. She nods, does not speak. You leave her there among the counted sacks, in the cold room that smells of grain and stone, and the particular fear that comes when everything depends on numbers holding still under examination. The eastern sky shows the first pale edge of morning as you cross back toward the keep. 34 hours. The grain is counted, the ledgers are ready. The household knows its story. What remains is whether the story survives a man whose reputation depends on finding the place where stories break. 36 hours remain. You find him in the granary at first light, counting sacks that were counted yesterday and will be counted again tomorrow. The lamplight catches the edge of his profile. The way his mouth moves slightly as he tallies. The way his hand rests on each sack for a moment longer than necessary, as if touch confirms what sight cannot guarantee. He does not startle when you approach. Men who have served 11 years in a single household do not startle easily. My lord. Thomas. The formality sits between you like a third presence. You have briefed Marjorie. You have reconciled the ledger. You have walked the route Sir Edmund will walk, and identified every sightline that matters. What remains is whether the people who must speak under oath will say what needs saying without variation. Sir Edmund of York has closed 6 northern estates this season. His circuit is mandated by Crown schedule. His arrival is not a courtesy visit. Sir Edmund will ask you about the harvest, you say. Thomas nods. His hand remains on the sack. He will ask when the counts were completed. He will ask who supervised the threshing. He will ask whether any grain was distributed before the official tallies were recorded. Yes, my lord. You watch his face in the lamplight, no hesitation, no calculation. Just the steady acceptance of a man who has answered harder questions than these and survived them. The counts were completed on the 8th of November, you say. You supervised the threshing personally. No distributions occurred before the tallies were entered in the estate ledger. Thomas repeats it back to you, word for word. The dates align, the sequence holds. The story has no gaps that an auditor could widen into contradictions. He may ask about dismissed servants. You continue. Now Thomas's hand lifts from the sack, folds behind his back. The posture of a man receiving instructions he will not question but must fully understand before executing. 6 were released after harvest, due to seasonal reduction in household need. Standard practice. Their names are recorded in the staff register with dates of departure and final wages paid. And if he asks where they went, north to families, 2 to York for winter work, 1 to the coast. You nod. The answer is plausible because it is true. What Thomas does not say, what he does not need to say because you have not asked him to say it, is that you know exactly where each one is, and that none of them will be speaking to Crown auditors about what they observed before leaving. The lamp flickers. Somewhere above, a shutter moves in the wind that has not stopped since yesterday. He will test you on numbers, you say. He will ask the same question 3 different ways to see if your answer changes. It will not change, my lord. He will imply that you are lying. I am not lying. The statement sits in the cold air between you, technically accurate. The counts Thomas supervised were recorded correctly. The distributions he oversaw followed the rationing schedule exactly as designed. The servants were dismissed for the reasons stated. Every word he has been instructed to say is true. What makes it a construction is not what Thomas will say. It is what he will not mention unless directly asked, and what Sir Edmund will not know to ask unless he already suspects the specific shape of the thing you have built to contain a 20% shortfall. You study Thomas's face in the lamplight. No doubt there, no fear. Just the calm of a man who has served long enough to understand that what lords ask, and what lords need, are not always spoken in the same language. The old bailiff knows his part. He has walked through harder winters than this one, stood before harsher questions. You think of the 200 souls sleeping in the keep tonight, unknowing. Thomas knows. Agnes the grainkeeper knows. The knowledge sits quiet in the granary air. If he asks whether rations were reduced, you say, what will you tell him? Rations were adjusted to winter distribution levels on the 14th of November, per standard estate practice. Not reduced. Adjusted. The distinction is everything. Reduced implies crisis. Adjusted implies management. One word invites scrutiny. The other invites a check mark in a ledger, and a move to the next question. Thomas meets your eyes. You see the understanding there. Not of deception but of precision. Of knowing which truths matter, and which create unnecessary complications, when an auditor is looking for reasons to classify an estate as mismanaged. You have done well, you say. He nods. Returns his hand to the sack he was counting. The tally continues where it left off, as if this conversation were simply another task in a day full of tasks that must be completed before Sir Edmund arrives, and begins the work of determining whether Thornwold Keep survives intact, or becomes another northern estate closed for administrative insufficiency. You leave him there. The lamp swings slightly as you pass. Behind you, Thomas's voice resumes its quiet count, steady and sure, marking grain that will be examined and questioned and measured against records that say exactly what they need to say and nothing more. The courtyard is still dark. Above the eastern wall, the sky holds no promise of dawn yet. 36 hours is both forever and no time at all. You begin at the gate because that is where he will begin. The stone is cold under your palm. the particular cold of November mornings when frost has settled into every surface and will not release until midday sun burns it loose. If it comes at all, the sky holds the grey weight of weather that has not yet decided whether to break or settle. Sir Edmund will stand here, 43 years old, 11 years in royal service, carrying sealed audit authority from the Exchequer. He will see what you see now, the outer courtyard, the well, the path to the storehouses, the main keep rising behind it all, with its narrow windows and thick walls that were built to hold against things other than auditors, but serve that purpose equally well. You walk the route slowly, not performing, observing. The well rope is coiled properly, the courtyard stones are clear of debris. The outer storehouse door sits square in its frame, hinges oiled, lock mechanism clean. Every detail that speaks to maintenance and order is visible. Every detail that speaks to shortage or crisis is not. This is what forensic theatre looks like when the performance must be invisible. The first storehouse. You open the door and step inside. The air is colder here, dense with the smell of grain and stone, and the particular mustiness of enclosed spaces in winter. The barrels are arranged in rows, each marked with chalk tallies that correspond to the ledger entries you reconciled 4 days ago. Sir Edmund will count them. He will measure the visible grain depth against the barrel dimensions, and calculate approximate volumes. He will compare those calculations to your recorded figures, and look for discrepancies that exceed normal variance. He built his reputation on finding what other auditors miss. The trick is that the discrepancies exist, but they exist within margins that look like measurement error rather than systematic shortage. 3% here, 4% there. The kind of gaps that appear when grain settles during storage, or when barrel dimensions vary slightly between cooperages, or when autumn humidity affects density calculations. Plausible, defensible, impossible to prove as intentional, unless he already knows what he is looking for. You move to the second storehouse. The routine repeats. Barrels. Tallies. Chalk marks that align with ledger entries that align with Thomas's testimony, that aligns with Marjorie's understanding of distribution schedules, that aligns with the rationing notices posted in November per standard winter practice. The system is a circle. Every element confirms every other element. There are no loose threads, because you have spent 72 hours tying them off or cutting them away entirely. The weak point is not the numbers hold. The weak point is whether anyone breaks when questioned, whether Peter the scullery boy mentions something he was not supposed to notice, whether Marjorie hesitates on a date, whether Thomas's certainty wavers under the third or fourth repetition of the same question phrased differently each time to create doubt. You exit the storehouse and continue toward the kitchen vaults. The path Sir Edmund will walk is the path you are walking now, the same stones, the same sightlines, the same sequence of locked doors and opened ledgers, and household members, who will answer questions while understanding that their answers determine whether 200 people survive winter under your authority, or under Crown receivership. His methods are procedurally ruthless. He cannot be bribed because his career advancement depends on documented thoroughness. You are not the first Northern Lord to prepare for his arrival. You will not be the last. The kitchen door is propped open. Warmth spills out. The residual heat of morning bread baking, the furnace still radiating from night fuel. Marjorie is inside, working through tasks that look exactly like the tasks she would be working through on any November morning, when no auditor was 36 hours from arrival. She looks up, nods, returns to her work. No words needed. She knows what she knows. The keys in her pocket carry the weight of that knowledge. You climb to the ramparts. The wind is sharper here, unobstructed by walls or buildings. It carries the smell of coming snow. Not today, but soon. Weather that will complicate Sir Edmund's travel schedule if it arrives early. weather that will make his inspection shorter and less thorough if he is racing against road conditions that threaten to trap him north of Yorkshire in a season when being trapped means not returning until spring. You are not counting on weather, but you are aware of it. Below, the estate spreads in the grey morning light, fields that should be richer, storehouses that should be fuller, a household that should be larger. All the failures that autumn delivered, now dressed in the language of reasonable management and seasonal adjustment and administrative competence. Sir Edmund will walk this route tomorrow. He will see what you have prepared for him to see. He will ask questions you have prepared answers for. He will look for gaps you have already found and sealed. Whether he finds something you missed is the part that cannot be controlled, only mitigated, only surrounded with enough plausible truth that the gaps look like normal variance rather than structural collapse. You descend from the ramparts. The stone steps are worn smooth by decades of boots. Your hand trails the wall, cold, solid, unchanged by anything that has happened in the last 10 days, or will happen in the next 36 hours. Thornwold Keep will stand regardless. The question is, who will hold its keys when spring arrives? The horizon holds no riders yet, but the York Road runs straight, and Crown's schedules are not suggestions. Everything is still now. Not the stillness of waiting, the stillness of completion. You sit in the solar with the ledger closed on the desk, the lamp burning low, the keys resting beside your hand where you placed them an hour ago, and have not moved since. Outside, the wind continues. Inside, the fire has burned down to coals that glow without flame, radiating the last of their stored warmth into a room that will be cold again by dawn. The preparation is finished. Thomas knows his testimony. Marjorie holds her keys and her knowledge. The ledger entries align with physical reality within margins that appear as measurement variance rather than systematic shortage. The dismissed servants are gone and tracked and unlikely to speak. The ration system functions as designed without revealing the calculation behind its design. What remains is the arrival, Sir Edmund of York, 43 years old, carrying sealed authority, and the interrogation, and the moment when he stands in your hall with 11 years of royal service behind him, and the power to dismantle everything you have protected. You do not move. Do not reach for the ledger to check it again. Do not walk the route again. Do not brief anyone again. The machine is built. It either functions or it does not. The lamp flickers. Shadows move across the stone walls. The same shadows that moved across these walls when your father held these keys, and his father before him, through seasons of plenty and seasons of failure, and seasons where the gap between the two was narrow enough that competent management made the difference. This is that season, the narrow margin. The place where what you know and what you can prove, and what an auditor can disprove, all converge into a single examination that will determine whether Thornwold Keep remains under your stewardship, or becomes another northern estate, classified as mismanaged, and placed under Crown oversight. You have done what can be done. The keys rest beside your hand. Iron, worn smooth by use, marked with the scratches of locks opened and closed across years of service. Each key unlocks something specific. Each lock protects something measured. The system is physical and provable and documented in records that say exactly what they need to say. Whether it holds is no longer a question you can answer by preparation. Your hand closes around the keys. The iron is cold, solid, unchanged by the fact that in 36 hours, a man you have never met will arrive at your gate with sealed authority from the Exchequer, and begin the work of determining whether your word, and your ledger, and your household's testimony constitute truth or construction. You set the keys down, stand. The solar is darker now, the lamp burning low enough that shadows outnumber the spaces where light reaches. Below, in the hall, in the storehouses, in the kitchen where Marjorie moved through her work this morning without hesitation, everything waits in the position you have set it. Locked, aligned, ready for examination. The fire crackles once, settles, goes silent. You leave the solar, the keys remain on the desk. Tomorrow you will carry them again. Tonight, they rest where systems rest, when the work of building them is complete, and the work of defending them has not yet begun. The corridor is cold. Your boots make no sound on stone worn smooth by centuries of footsteps that came before yours and will continue after. Regardless of what Sir Edmund's report says, or what the Exchequer decides, or whether Thornwald Keep survives this winter intact. What you have built will either hold or break. There is no middle ground, no partial success, no credit for effort when the outcome is failure. You reach your chamber. The bed is cold. The window shows nothing but darkness, and the shape of the wind moving through a valley that does not care whether you sleep or whether you lie awake counting hours, until an auditor arrives to count everything you have tried to protect. 36 hours. You close your eyes. The darkness is absolute. The cold is constant. The wind continues its work. And somewhere on the York Road, Sir Edmund rides north. 24 hours remain. The hall is empty at this hour, the long table cleared of everything except the ledger, your ledger. The one Sir Edmund of York will ask to see first, because auditors always begin with the numbers before moving to the grain stores themselves. You open it to the page where Thomas's count for the Northfield appears, 17 bushels recorded. The number is correct now, adjusted 3 days ago to match the distributed rations, the story you built around a shortage that never appeared in any official record as a shortage at all. The door opens. You don't look up immediately. My lord. Father Benedict's voice. He stops 2 paces from the table, close enough to see what you're reading but not close enough to presume. You close the ledger. Father. The morning count is complete. The stores match the record. They should. He doesn't move, doesn't leave. After a moment, Sir Edmund will ask questions that have no comfortable answers. He will ask questions that have accurate answers. You meet his eyes. Whether they are comfortable is not part of the audit. And if he asks why the ration schedule began before his arrival was announced, then the answer is that prudent management does not wait for royal messengers to confirm what the harvest already made clear. You tap the ledger once. The schedule was implemented on the 15th of October. His travel orders were issued in London on the 9th. We did not know he was coming. We knew the winter would be long. Father Benedict considers this. You are certain the timing will hold. The timing is documented. The messenger arrived on the 3rd of November. The rations began 19 days earlier. There is no connection to prove because there was no connection to make. He nods slowly, then, and if he does not believe you, you don't answer immediately. Outside, the wind moves through the courtyard, cold, steady, the kind of wind that strips leaves and finds gaps in stone. Then he will write what he believes in his report, and the Exchequer will decide whether belief matters more than a record that contains no discrepancy he can name. Father Benedict is silent for a long moment. Then he inclines his head and turns toward the door. You wait until his footsteps fade before opening the ledger again, not to check the numbers. You know the numbers. You open it because 24 hours from now, this book will be in someone else's hands, and every decision you made in the last 10 days will either hold under scrutiny or collapse the moment a trained auditor finds the seam you couldn't smooth. The Northfield count, 17 bushels. The ration schedule, implemented October 15th. The dismissed servants, paid in full, departure recorded, no grievances filed. Everything is accurate, everything is documented. Everything depends on a man you have never met, deciding that accuracy is enough. The lamp sputters. The mechanism of Crown audits is elegant in its simplicity. Sir Edmund will compare 3 documents: your submitted tax assessment, your household ledger, and the physical grain stores. And any variance between them becomes a question he is required to pursue. You build the numbers to answer those questions before they are asked. Whether he will accept those answers is not something numbers can predict. You close the ledger. The lamp flickers once. Low oil, nearly gone. You leave it burning anyway. By morning it will be out. The stone is cold beneath your hands. The cold wakes you before dawn. Not the cold of winter arriving, that has been here for weeks. This is the cold of a room where the fire died hours ago, and no one came to rebuild it. The kind of cold that finds the gap between blanket and skin, and makes itself known in the space where sleep was. You lie still for a moment. The darkness is complete. No moonlight, no lamp glow, nothing but the weight of wool, and the sound of your own breath in a room that holds no other warmth. Somewhere outside, the wind moves through the courtyard. You hear it against the shutters, not a howl, not a gust, just the steady press of November air against wood that has stood against it for 40 years and will stand against it 40 more. You think about Sir Edmund on the York Road, whether he has stopped for the night or pressed through, whether the wind touches him the same way it touches you, impartial, thorough, cold. The ledger is where you left it, on the table, closed, waiting. You do not get up to check it again. There is nothing to check. The numbers were correct yesterday. They are correct now. They will be correct when the auditor's hand turns the first page, and his eyes find the column where 17 bushels are recorded beside Thomas's initials and the date of the count. Your breath slows. The cold remains. In 20 hours, a man with 11 years of royal service will arrive at your gate with the authority to examine every decision you made since the harvest failed. He will ask why the rations began early, why certain servants were dismissed, why the grain count in the North Field is lower than projected, but the tax obligation remains unchanged in your submitted report. You will answer each question. The answers are prepared, they are accurate, they will hold. The wind continues. You listen to it the way you listened to it 3 weeks ago, when the realization came that 200 lives would depend on calculations that left no margin for error, and no room for the truth to be anything other than what the numbers said it was. The cold moves deeper, not painful, insistent. It finds your hands first, then your feet, then the hollow at the base of your throat where pulse meets skin. This is the cold that Peter sits beside every morning in the kitchen, tending the fire that must not go out, because the household cannot afford the fuel to rebuild it from nothing. This is the cold that Thomas the old bailiff knows in the granary, where stone walls hold winter like a promise. The shutters creak once, settle, the room is silent again. Warmth is a memory, the cold is present. You close your eyes. Sleep, when it comes, is brief. The keys are still in your hand when you wake. Not held. Resting. Your palm curved around the iron shape of them. The weight familiar enough that you stopped noticing it hours ago. Days ago. You cannot remember the last time you set them down. The room is dim. Morning maybe, or the hour just before it, when the darkness thins but the light has not yet committed. You straighten slowly. The cold is still here. It has been here all night. You do not remember falling asleep at the desk, but the ledger is closed in front of you, and your shoulders carry the stillness of someone who has not moved in a long time. The keys shift in your palm. You look at them. 3 iron rings, one for the grain stores, one for the kitchen vaults, one for the ledger room where the tax records are kept, and where, in 18 hours, Sir Edmund of York will begin the work of determining whether Thornwald Keep is competently managed or a failed estate requiring Crown intervention. You think about the moment you will hand him these keys. Not because he will ask. He has his own authority, his own access. but because at some point in the inspection there will be a door he needs opened, and you will be the one to open it. The iron is cold against your skin. You feel the ridges where the blacksmith's hammer shaped the wards, the smooth patch where your thumb has rested for 3 years. Agnes the grainkeeper carries a copy of the first key. Marjorie the cook holds the second. The third has no copy. It opens the room where original documents are stored, the place where discrepancies between memory and record become visible. You set the keys on the desk beside the ledger. The sound is small, final. Outside, the wind has stopped. The courtyard is silent in the way that precedes snow. Not peaceful, but waiting. The air holds its cold close, and nothing moves. You think about Thomas in the granary, counting sacks he has already counted. About Marjorie in the kitchen, carrying the keys you gave her, and the story you built for her to repeat. About Peter, awake by the furnace, holding the silence you told him mattered more than the truth he thought he heard. They are all waiting, you are all waiting. The light grows incrementally, grey then slightly less grey. The day is coming whether you are ready for it or not. You leave the keys where they are, on the desk, beside the ledger. In 18 hours someone else will decide if the weight you carried was justified. For now, the room is still. The cold is present. The waiting continues. Your hands are empty. The furnace room no longer holds heat the way it did. You stand in the doorway. The boy sleeps beside the banked coals, curled on his side, wool blanket pulled to his chin. His breath rises and falls in the steady rhythm of someone who has stopped counting hours. The stone floor beneath him radiates the last warmth the furnace gave before banking. By dawn it will be cold. You do not wake him. The lamp in your hand throws light across the threshold but does not reach him. He sleeps in shadow. His hands are tucked beneath his cheek. The calluses on his palms are new. 3 weeks of carrying wood and scrubbing pots in a household under rationing leaves, marks that do not fade quickly. He does not know Sir Edmund's questions yet. He does not know what an auditor can ask when testimony is required under oath. He knows bread is measured now. He knows rations were posted. He knows his work continues in smaller portions. That is enough for sleep. You step back. The door closes without sound. The latch settles into place with the soft iron click of something secured. The corridor beyond is darker than the furnace room. Your lamp swings slightly as you turn. The flame steadies. Somewhere above, in the hall, Marjorie the cook rests with her keys. Thomas the old bailiff sleeps in his quarters with the corrected ledger entry memorized. Father Benedict keeps vigil in the chapel, where no confession was offered and none required. Agnes the grainkeeper no longer walks these halls, dismissed with the others, her silence purchased with severance and departure before questions could reach her. The storehouses are locked, the numbers reconcile, the story holds. Peter the scullery boy sleeps, because no one has told him it should not. You walk the corridor toward the stairs. The lamp throws your shadow long against the stone. Your footsteps echo once, then settle into the rhythm of inspection completed. The keys at your belt make no sound. They have been carried so long they move with you. The cold comes from the outer walls now, seeping through stone that has stood for generations and will stand for generations more. It touches your face. Your breath mists briefly in the lamplight, then fades. Somewhere beyond these walls, a royal auditor measures distance in hours now, not days. His horse knows the road. His authority does not require haste to be absolute. You do not count the hours remaining. The number has not changed since the last time you checked. Sir Edmund rides north. The road does not shorten because you wish it. The audit arrives on schedule. What remains is what you have built. A household briefed, a ledger balanced, a ration system documented as necessity rather than failure. Peter's breath continues in the furnace room behind you, steady, untroubled. The kind of sleep that comes when the day's work is finished and tomorrow has not yet required vigilance. 200 souls rest in quarters scattered through this keep, most of them sleeping as he sleeps, unknowing, protected by preparation they will never see. You let him keep it. The outer courtyard holds no movement. You cross toward the storehouse row under a sky that shows no stars. The lamp in your hand is the only light between the inner keep and the grain sheds. Your breath fogs. Your boots sound against flagstone still slick with frost that will not melt until midday. The first storehouse door stands exactly as you left it, locked, the iron hasp cold beneath your palm when you test it. The wood does not shift. Inside, 17 sacks of grain packed to regulation depth, measured to reconcile with the ledger entry, Thomas will repeat without variation when questioned. You do not open it. The second storehouse, same lock, same test, same stillness. The air around the doors carries the faint smell of old straw and wood that has absorbed 30 years of grain dust. Nothing fresh. Nothing that suggests recent disturbance or hasty redistribution. That is the story: pre-planned rationing, controlled reduction. Autumn adjustment documented before winter arrival. You move to the third door, your hand rests on the iron, the cold transfers through your glove, you feel the bolt settled in its housing, secured. Sir Edmund will walk this same path. He will test these same locks. He will ask why they were installed, when the rationing decision was made, whether the timing suggests reactive panic or administrative foresight. You installed them 6 days ago. The household believes they have stood for months. The lamp flickers as wind crosses the courtyard. You turn your back to it. The flame steadies. Your shadow stretches long across the flagstones toward the gate Sir Edmund will enter in less than 30 hours. The storehouses wait in their row, silent, locked, containing exactly what the ledger claims they contain, no more, no less, rationed according to documented necessity rather than discovered shortfall. You tested the locks because that is what preparation requires. They hold. The doors do not shift. The story is built into wood and iron, and numbers that reconcile when calculated by a man who has closed 6 estates this season, for failures smaller than the one you have concealed. The wind shifts. It carries no snow yet, only cold. You walk back toward the keep. The lamplight swings with your stride. Behind you, 3 locked doors, 17 sacks per storehouse, a rationing system that appears older than it is. Peter sleeps. Marjorie rests. Thomas breathes steadily in quarters where the corrected ledger has replaced doubt with rehearsed certainty. The courtyard empties behind you. Your footsteps fade against stone. The storehouses stand in darkness, locked, measured, aligned with a story that must hold when a man trained in finding gaps begins pressing on them. You do not look back. The sound reaches you through the closed door of his quarters. Not loud, not troubled, the steady rasp of a man sleeping deeply after a day's labor completed. You stand in the corridor outside. Your lamp is dimmed. The sound continues. Rhythmic, unbroken. The kind of breathing that suggests no nightmares about auditors or ledger discrepancies or questions under oath. He sleeps because you told him the story holds. You do not wake him to confirm it again. The corridor is colder here, farther from the hall's residual warmth, closer to the outer walls where November presses through stone. Your breath mists. The sound of Thomas's sleep continues behind the door, in, out, steady as a heartbeat. Tomorrow he will repeat the numbers you gave him. He will confirm the rationing timeline without hesitation. He will answer Sir Edmund's questions with the faith of a man who has served this household for 40 years, and trusts that his lord's preparation is sufficient. That faith is a tool. You maintain it the way you maintain the locks on the storehouses, with care, with precision, with the understanding that collapse anywhere means collapse everywhere. The snoring continues. You turn away. The lamplight swings. Your shadow moves across the stone wall and dissolves into darkness beyond the lamp's reach. Somewhere, Peter asleep by banked coals, Marjorie resting with keys that unlock nothing she is not permitted to see, the grain sheds standing in their row. The ledger closed on your desk with numbers that reconcile to the penny. And Thomas, breathing steadily, deeply without doubt. You let him keep it. The keep breathes around you. Not the wind, not the watchmen on the walls. The stones themselves, expanding and contracting with temperature, settling imperceptibly, holding their shape against cold that has tested them for generations. You stand in the corridor between your quarters and the hall. The lamp is extinguished now. Darkness is complete. You do not need light to know where you are. You have walked these halls for years. Peter sleeps. Thomas sleeps. Marjorie sleeps. The dismissed servants are gone, scattered to holdings where their silence costs less than their testimony. Father Benedict keeps vigil in the chapel not because confession is required, but because presence is comfort when the household rests under rationing. The storehouses are locked. The ledger reconciles. The story is built. Sir Edmund rides north. The road shortens with every hour. He carries sealed authority and 11 years of royal service, and a reputation built on finding what other auditors miss. He will arrive. He will inspect. He will question. And he will find a household rationed according to documented necessity, briefed on consistency, organized around preparation that appears months old rather than days desperate. You did not save them by knowing everything. You saved them by knowing exactly what could be proven and what must remain unspoken. That is competence. The darkness is warm now, not from fire but from bodies sleeping in quarters built to shelter them through winters harder than this one. The walls hold. The keep stands. 200 souls rest in the protection you maintained, by accepting that some failures cannot be prevented, only concealed long enough for survival to become routine. You breathe. The keep breathes. Outside, the north wind continues. The storehouses stand locked. The road from York runs straight toward a gate. Sir Edmund will reach in hours measured now not in days but in the space between one breath and the next. Inside, sleep. You walk toward your quarters. Your hand finds the door latch without light. The iron is cold, familiar. You step inside, close the door. The darkness is complete. You remove the keys from your belt, set them on the table beside the bed. The weight leaves your hand. The sound of iron settling against wood is soft, final, but not permanent. Tomorrow you will carry them again. Tonight, only breath, only warmth, only the knowledge that preparation is complete, and what remains is performance. You lie down. The wool blanket is heavy. The straw mattress holds your shape. Outside, the wind touches the walls. Inside, the darkness softens. Your eyes close. Sleep comes, not because the danger has passed, but because the work that guards against it is done. Peter sleeps by banked coals. Thomas snores steadily in quarters where doubt has been replaced with rehearsed certainty. Marjorie rests with keys she will use exactly as instructed. The storehouses stand locked in their row. And you, Lord of Thornwold Keep, keeper of rationed time, steward of 200 lives balanced on numbers that reconcile, and a story that holds, you sleep, because competence is knowing when vigilance becomes exhaustion, and when rest is the final preparation before audit. The keep breathes. You breathe with it. Tomorrow, Sir Edmund. Tonight, only this. The weight of blankets, the darkness complete, the steady rhythm of breath slowing into sleeping.